I'd like to start the meeting if that's okay with everybody. Welcome to the Greater Cambridge City Steel Executive Board. Just like to move us on to the first item on the agenda, election of chairman. Could I ask board members whether they have any nominations for the position of chairman, please?
Thank you. I would like to propose Councillor Lewis Herbert as chairman this year.
Thank you. Is that seconded, please?
Yes, it's duly seconded. Councillor Ian Bates.
Any further nominations? All those in favour then of Councillor Herbert as chairman of the board? That is carried and duly elected.
Well, thank you for your support for a further year. There was an option of rotating it, but apparently the board decided against it. So the next item on the agenda is the election of vice chair. Any nominations?
Mr Chairman, can I please nominate Councillor Francis Burkett as chairman and vice chairman?
Okay. Well, I'm happy to second that. Any other nominations? Okay, then I declare that Francis Burkett is vice chairman for the coming year. So, at that point, I'd just like to welcome everybody. Welcome to this meeting of the Cambridge City Steel Board. We are here to be accountable to people for decisions and also to listen. So we've got a significant number of public questions this afternoon. If people, and I see we've had one request, if people do want to ask them as part of item 6, they're welcome to, but it would be most useful, I think, if people are able to stay to ask them during the specific items. So we've got questions on the overall access and capacity study. We've got questions on Histon Road, Milton Road, and a couple of other items on the agenda. Because we have 32 questions, and really just in line with how we handled questions at the last meeting, and also how the Assembly held them, we would appreciate if people could stick to a minute in asking them. We hope that you are interested particularly in the answers. As chair, I will just check that the questions are answered. Now, some people in the audience might think they weren't answered as well as they wanted, or they weren't the right answer, but I certainly as chair I will aim to achieve that, including because the way we operate, it isn't going to be a dialogue. There isn't an opportunity for supplementary questions. So we do obviously have some strongly held views about a number of the items on the agenda, and we want to hear what people have got to say, and we also want to give plenty of time to respond to that. So the meeting will last as long as it needs to, but I know that this room has only been booked till 6:30, at which point the karate club takes over. I just mentioned that because I remember a long council meeting once when people said breakfast will be available if needed. But so if we obviously will seek to conduct our business properly and with plenty of input, but if we we'll just see where we get to. I hope that we can complete the business in front of us today. So I'll make perhaps a couple more points about questions when we get to item 6. But if I could just take apologies for absence.
Thanks, Chairman. No apologies as such, just some membership issues to report. Mr John Bridge has resigned from the board, so Mark Reed is here today acting as his substitute on behalf of the Local Enterprise Partnership, and also Councillor Ian Bates has been appointed onto the board by Cambridgeshire County Council in place of Councillor Stephen Hammond. Okay.
So and I understand that the Local Enterprise Partnership will be looking at the issue of the membership at its next meeting. Okay. Thank you for that. So I'll move on. Minutes of the last meeting on the 3rd of March. Are people happy that those are a correct record? Thank you. So I move on. Are there any declarations of interest from members of the board in items on the agenda? They can also be declared at the time, but if there are there any declarations of interest? Okay. Right. If I move on to questions, I was going to take particularly questions by members of the public where they're not directly related to a specific item, and also the question from Robin Hayden. So I think I had Dorcas The question from Dorcas, the question from Stephen Brown, and the question from Robin Hayden to take now. But then, are there any others who want to ask a question who may not be able to stay later? So I just don't want to deny people the chance of a question. I can't predict the timing of items on the agenda. So if I could first take Dorcas. Sorry, I haven't got my notes in front of me because I've just moved places. So welcome, Dorcas.
Enhancing park and ride is acknowledged as an important element under the Greater Cambridge City Deal. If the aim is to accommodate additional commuter numbers by making the best use of existing sites, as well as creating new ones, it is obvious that there is potential in the North Cambridge Station site, which is on track for 2017, and where there is space for a multi-storey car park. As a transport hub with provision for more than the current 400 parking spaces, it could, in effect, serve as park and ride, and also help to ease the congestion caused by schools traffic. Can we be assured further work will be done on exploiting the North Cambridge Station site to its full potential?
Thank you. If I could ask Bob Mingus to respond first, and then if questions were asked at the Assembly, that's of no moment, because we are also, as a board, more accountable in terms of the fact that there may be answers that we or members of the board may want to add to. Bob Mingus.
Thank you. Can you hear me? Okay. I think that's a yes. Thank you. Cambridge North Station is being developed as a transport hub. There will be direct interchange between buses and trains and a high level of cycle parking. Although the location of the car park is to change, the number of parking spaces is not changing. But we don't see it as being a particularly good site for park and ride. We have the existing Milton park and ride site north of the A14. That means traffic intersects the A10 before it reaches the Milton interchange. And we're also looking at having a park and ride further out on the A10 as part of the A10 study that the City Deal commissioned. Again, to intersect people further out in their cars rather than trafficking further into the city. So while we are developing to its maximum extent as a transport hub, we don't see it's a particularly suitable site for park and ride, as it's too far in.
But we'll obviously be particularly looking at the impact of the Cambridge North Station and its detailed design in terms of how it integrates, including measures such as the cross-city cycling that we're proposing for that area.
As a scheme that's actually being built right now, this next year will be open.
Yep.
It's factored into all our analysis and all that already.
Okay. All right, thank you. Thank you, Dorcas. Stephen Brown. Welcome.
I, along with the majority of young people in the city, have a full-time job. This makes it very difficult to attend these meetings when they're during the day. I feel that by holding these meetings during working hours, you're effectively excluding the working population and limiting the attendees to include only members of the community who have retired and could perhaps more easily be ignored. Do you think it's fair and democratic to hold these kinds of meetings at a time when a large section of the population will be excluded?
It's a fair question, and one that we haven't directly considered. The people who are on the board hopefully aren't retired, and obviously we sometimes would benefit from having meetings in the evening as well. So I think we'll take it away and we'll get back to you, and then we'll post the answer also on the City Deal board as well, on the website. So in principle, I'm perfectly happy with the idea of varying the times of meetings, so that some of them are in the evening. Okay, thanks. So the third question now would be from Robin Hayden, because Robin's not able, I think, to stay for the meetings.
I apologise, I'm currently in another meeting at the same time. In the previous meeting, I asked about world-class infrastructure, and the answer given was encouraging at the time. I won't repeat what's written in the minutes you've just approved for time. The urban design guidance for transport infrastructure projects document set before you today does not meet this clear commitment. I'll point out, for example, that Hills Road cycleway is 2.3 metres wide, Huntingdon Road cycleway is 2.1 metres wide. The minimum width cycleway proposed in that document is 1.2 metres wide, with an aspiration of 2 metres. So it doesn't even meet what is on the ground today. I asked the board to reject the urban design guidance at this meeting, as it doesn't meet that previous commitment, and CamCycle will offer our services for free to help to update that document for the benefit of everybody.
Thank you for that question. I mean, anticipating the item that's coming later on the agenda, and obviously the Assembly has already had words on this issue, that we expect to agree later to update and develop this guide further. So we recognise that it's work in progress, really. So we expect a further update to it. I don't know if you want to add anything to that. Okay. So
And the offer.
this is not setting a precedent.
No, no.
Sorry.
And the offer to help.
Sorry. Yeah. I'm very happy to accept the offer from the cycling campaign to have input on that. I think if you refer back to the answer I gave earlier, part of my conditional response is that clearly in different environments in the city we have to try and balance the green environment, the cycling, the other road uses. So life in Cambridge dealt us a very good hand in many ways, but in terms of some of the road widths, not a good hand. So yeah, we'll definitely take up on your offer. Yeah. Okay.
And I do apologise. Okay.
No. Thank you. So we then move on, unless there's any other people who want to ask their question now, to item 7. So we've got 3 petitions. So we've got 3 petitions to be presented. Firstly, Charles Nesbitt about on the subject of saving trees and verges on Milton Road. Charles.
Thank you very much. There is a petition which has been circulated on paper and online, and it reads: Greater Cambridge City Deal are proposing to widen Milton Road, chopping down the beautiful cherry trees, removing the grass verges and replacing them with acres of tarn. As many as 83% of the trees on Milton Road are destined to be removed if these proposals go ahead. Local residents are horrified that their avenue will be turned into a treeless corridor, closing key routes into side streets and splitting the community into 2. Recent research has encouraged towns and cities to plant trees and shrubs along roads, citing the environmental advantages not only for air quality, but also for the well-being of citizens by reducing stress. Grass verges, in addition to tree roots, help with drainage problems. Some cities in the UK have actually changed their road layouts to incorporate trees. Cambridge should be at the forefront of such developments. There are many alternatives to widening the road. So that's the petition. It's currently received 1,287 paper signatures and 1,530 online, and that makes 2,827. There's a magic figure of 3,000, which we're very rapidly approaching. Thank you. Some 540 comments in varying different directions have been sent in addition to the online replies, and now I'll give you a very short selection of them. Cambridge resident: this is a beautiful tree with its beautiful street with its blossoming trees, which I often walk along with my very young children. Residents need to have a voice as well. Why should residents pay the price to benefit non-residents? Here's one Cambridge resident, not by birth. I absolutely love the trees on Milton Road. I moved to this country 2 years ago from America, and those trees are one of the many things I really enjoy about Cambridge. I saw those trees and thought, how gorgeous. I'm so happy I found a city that values nature like this. That's so rare. And a very short one to end it. Traffic needs to be reduced, not trees.
And so we received that petition from Milton Road Residents Association. A second petition, also on Milton Road, is in relation to segregated cycleways, and that's from Hester Wells. And if Roxanne, do you want to present it on Hester's behalf?
I'll just read the comments from the Assembly meeting on the spot. Our petition, we the undersigned, request that Milton Road improvements under the City Deal should include high-quality cycleways, physically separated from both motor traffic and pedestrians, was created in advance of the Milton Road City Deal public consultation and submitted on the county's official petition site with 640 verified signatures. We are pleased to see that segregated cycle lanes are being pursued, but urge the Assembly to note the need for quality. All facilities will not get used, wasting the public's time and money and missing the opportunity to get new people cycling in an environment in which they feel safe. It is encouraging new cycling, which is crucial to reducing congestion and making best use of limited space within the city. CamCycle has produced a guide, Making Space for Cycling, which has been endorsed by national cycling bodies and sets out the principles of good cycling infrastructure. 25% petitioners were from the wider Cambridgeshire area, even on this very local matter, showing that support for cycling is not confined to the city. Quality cycling facilities not only enable longer journeys to be made by bike easily, but also reduce people cycling on the road and the conflicts that are created between modes of transport of different speed and size. With this clear support for quality cycleways on Milton Road, I ask the Board what measures are being taken to ensure the proposed cycleways are of sufficient quality to increase cycling modal share on the route. I would just like to highlight that does not mean in sacrifice of the trees. We like to be protected by trees.
Okay, well, thank you for that petition. And yeah, we have demonstrated a commitment to increasing facilities for cycling, and subject to the discussions, obviously, in terms of Milton Road and other roads, we will be looking where we can for segregated cycling lanes.
Nice and wide.
Thank you. And then there's the third petition, and I think the petitioners weren't able to be at the Assembly. I've got a request to present a petition from Philippe and Christine Lafont. They're not here? No? So there's a petition of 755 signatures opposed to the scheme proposed for Histon Road. Are they here?
No, it's not.
So is there someone who wants, do you want to present it? No?
Sorry, this is I've only just arrived. Am I permitted to speak?
Well, it's presenting a petition, so if Councillor Hipkin, you want to contribute, I'd suggest you do on item 10 when we come to that.
You just need someone to say no.
So, councillors who are in the room have got the right at the invitation of the board to make short contributions, but I'd suggest it's best to be on the item. Okay? So, we'll take the petition as being presented of 755 signatures, and we'll respond appropriately to Mr. and Mrs. Lafont. So we then come to item 8, and I welcome Councillor Roger Hickford, who's now the chair of the City Deal Assembly. Yeah. Then if I could just ask you just to start, sort of introduce your report, and then say how you want to contribute during the remainder of the items. Councillor Hickford.
Thank you, Chair. I think the best way forward would be to, sorry, can you hear me? To have the public first, and then I can come in just before the board actually debate and discuss the item, if that's okay.
Okay, thank you. So we'll take the input from the board after each of the sections of public questions. So we've got the sections of public questions ahead of each of the further items on the agenda. So item 9, which I move on to, is the Cambridge Access and Capacity Study. So I think if we take the public questions first, and then the then we can take the contribution from the Joint Assembly, and then the officer introduction. Yeah? Okay. Sorry, my computer's blowing me up. The order I've got is going to be handed over to me. So, in terms of this item on the agenda, we've got two public questions, one from Robin Pellew and one from Barbara Taylor. So if I could ask Robin to ask your question first, and then Barbara.
This is a question from Cambridge PPF. Is it fair that the people of Cambridge and South Cambridgeshire should be denied the opportunity to have their say in the choice of alternative packages to reduce congestion? A congestion charge package is likely to be rejected mainly on the grounds of fairness and equality. So regarding the City Deal's own package, Cambridge PPF asks, is it fair that the proposed peak hour control points will leave some people's commuting journey completely unaffected, whilst other people will have their lives turned upside down? Is it fair that people, particularly within the rural areas of South Cambridgeshire, are forced to put up with a mediocre bus service when the substantial investment that could improve their services is denied them? Surely, rather than the council officers or the City Deal acting as arbiters of fairness, the fairness approach of all would be to consult the public. Denying them this opportunity flies in the face of the council's own consultation procedures and could risk legal challenge. Thank you.
Thank you. If I could ask Bob Mingus to say a few words, then I'll add a few, and then maybe other comments from other members of the board. Okay. It's been suggested we will answer this question in full, but if I could ask Barbara to ask her question as well, as it's on similar ground, Robin. So Barbara Taylor.
I'm Barbara Taylor, and I've been a resident of Milton Road for over 35 years. One of the many suggestions in the call for evidence sessions for tackling congestion in Cambridge is a congestion charge or road fare for peak times. Your own report suggests this would bring in an annual income of between 40 to 44 million pounds, which exceeds all other congestion solving suggestions and is acknowledged as the most effective way of influencing behavioural change. This large amount raised would be ring-fenced to subsidise bus services, including park and ride, by extending the hours and frequency of services, buses generally. These improvements are important for those living, especially in the surrounding villages, as well as the city, giving affordable and reliable bus services for regular journeys to work, school or college at peak times, and thereby people less reliant on private cars. I am speeding. It is important for the good of Greater Cambridge area and all its residents that all City Deal members look again at the congestion charge for peak times, irrespective of which political party supports this idea. My question is, why has a congestion charge been dismissed without going to public consultation?
So Bob Mingus can introduce, and then we can add some comments of our own. But if you want to sit, you're welcome to.
Do you want me just to sit down to those questions now and go on to the report?
Well, I think there's a value in answering the question now, just for clarity as an introduction. But obviously, in the discussion, I would expect, come back with more detail.
Chair, I don't know if this is an appropriate time, because obviously the office is going to answer, but there was also concern from the Assembly over congestion charging. So would you like me to do that bit for the Assembly now and come in as and when?
No, I think we'll answer the questions that we've got, Roger, if that's okay. We'll obviously come on to more detail on in the discussion of the report. So, I mean, from a board's perspective, We listened to the call for evidence and looked at the options, and we also particularly focused on the criteria. We accept, as you've said, Mr. Pellew, and as Barbara Taylor alluded to, there's different ways of judging those criteria. So there will be different views about fairness, about deliverability, about how such a scheme is going to be implemented, environmental impact, economic impact, and other features. I think at the heart of it, and it's subject to the discussion that we have as a board, was the view that if we had a further period of consultation on an option that we as a board didn't fully support, or if we had an option consultation as a debate, then that wouldn't take us further forward, and we may be at Christmas. Now, in terms of the public debate, I am perfectly happy to debate whatever the board decides against the congestion charge and against other options that are proposed. So I fully expect that when the opportunity for a public discussion on all of these issues in July occurs, that the advocates of congestion charge will put their point of view, and that there will be meetings when I or other people are being invited, and we will have a debate about what we think is the best of the two options. Now, I accept that for some that isn't in methodology as good as coming up of having a debate between the two. But I think if other board members may want to add to it, but our view was that we've come to a conclusion on some of the principles. We believe that we've got a sound basis for doing that, and that we want to listen to the public challenge on that preferred option. Our concern was that, particularly with issues raised by people about why should the radial routes or why should local schemes take all the pressure, that if we continued this discussion for another 18 months or 2 years, and there is talk, and I'm not saying it's totally valid, but there is talk that the congestion charge would require a much more formal public consultation and could take 3 years, that we would not be in a position to implement some measures to reduce peak time citywide congestion until well after some of the more local schemes would come in. So our judgment, both on assessing the options but also on implementation, was, subject to the discussion today, that we actually wanted to put a proposal to the public. But the public debate in the city is wide-ranging. I'm sure there will be opportunities for meetings, there will be plenty of challenge, and we will see where the debate that will happen in the public arena goes. But that's our position. We will obviously happily elaborate on it in the discussion that we have on the officer's report, including when we've listened to Roger. But that's been our position and why we've chosen this route. I don't know if any other members of the board want to act. I mean, we are not rushing at this, but we do believe that we have to. Well, not when we've got a further consultation, not when we've got a further report in December. There will be those with a different view, and I'm quite happy to debate the issue when the issue is in the public domain, when the reports on it are fully issued.
Am I allowed to respond or no?
Not at this point, but I think if you want to have a debate with me in the public arena, then I'm very happy to do that.
Why not put it in the public?
We'll come back in more detail in the discussion. As I've said, there are both issues about deliverability on the option that you propose, but there is particularly a second round of discussion would be created, and any proposal that would come out of that would only start going into the public domain in 2017. And how many years would it take to implement it? That does not rule out that as a future option, but it isn't the option that is before us, and we will see what is discussed today. So I hope that also answers your question, Barbara, but we will...
Discussion. We want a discussion on it.
Well, I'm saying there will be a public debate. There's already been discussion in different methods. I'm very happy to continue the discussion, but we will see what the board decides. There is an item on the agenda. The board will make a decision today. Thank you. Councillor Hickford.
Thank you, Chair. I think you've covered a lot of it. There was much discussion at the Assembly on whether a congestion charge should be included in the consultation or not. An amendment was actually put forward with the case, but it was defeated 8-3 at the Assembly. That doesn't mean to say, that the Assembly says no. It just there is some opinion that says there should be a congestion charge, but the majority of the opinion said no, we should carry on as the recommendations. But it does seem sensible that should the recommendations go through as proposed, then a thorough explanation as to why the congestion charge is not included in the consultation. The consultation should come forward. Okay. Moving on to the congestion control points, there was a little bit of discussion on that. There was concern about the displacement of traffic and what that might cause, and whether the correct modal shift would actually happen that is being thought would happen by officers. So that was the concern for the actual congestion control points. With regard to the workplace parking levy, there was a lot of discussion on this, and it became very clear that this must not be seen as a tax on businesses, and there must be a proper reason why we're raising the money and what we're going to spend that money on. And obviously Nottingham was produced as evidence that they had 100% buy-in from businesses, and the money went towards the tram system. And we'd like exactly the same sort of thing in Cambridge and the Greater Cambridge area. So we must work with businesses and get their buy-in should we have a workplace parking levy. There was a comment that actually quite a few businesses still are pretty much unaware of the city deal and what it's trying to do, and actually about a workplace parking levy, whether they knew anything at all about that. So I think communication needs to be getting out there, make sure that we're doing our bit as far as communication to businesses are concerned, because there was some comment on that at the Assembly. There was...
Sorry, afterwards. I want a point of information. What does a modal shift mean in this context? Makes no sense to me as a lady.
Explain that term, please.
Sorry, I don't know the order.
Okay, the modal shift we're talking about is getting people out of cars and onto other forms of transport. That's a modal shift.
Sorry. Modal shift is, as we'll discuss when we come to this item, we've got a limited amount of road space, and in addition to effectively limiting the number of cars coming into the city, we want to shift a greater percentage of journeys onto buses and onto cycling and other routes. That's modal shift.
Okay, thank you, Chair. Thank you, Chair. I'm just going to there's one last bit on the workplace parking levy. Actually, there was another side to it that some employers are already looking to reduce car parking spaces, and so actually it might not be such an issue for employers that we might think. So that's what the Assembly looked at mostly. Well, you've obviously seen draft minutes, etc., and I know some of the board members were there listening to the Assembly meeting. So the main points here was the congestion charge, which I'm sure we're going to talk about a lot going forward, the workplace parking levy, which I've just covered, and the congestion control points. Thank you, Chair.
Okay, thank you, and I'll respond to those when we get to the item.
Sorry, and I should have just said, if I may, Chair, the Assembly voted in favour of the recommendations in the end.
Sorry, Mr. Nisbet?
I may have made a mistake here. I put down a question specifically for this item. It's not to do with congestion charge, which is why I didn't stand up a moment ago and say, should I do that? But I would like to ask it before the officers reply.
If you want to ask it now, please come forward. So question 19, Mr. Nisbet.
At its paragraph 64, the paper on the Cambridge Access and Capacity Study includes this statement. Work on the Access Study has not identified options for managing demand within the city that would remove the need for other city deal interventions, such as the Milton Road, Histon Road, or Cambourne to Cambridge schemes in tranche 1 of the programme. But the anti-congestion measures proposed for other parts of Cambridge will undoubtedly also have a beneficial impact on traffic in the Milton Road, Histon Road and Madingley Road areas. So it must be folly to rush into irreversible and intensely unpopular engineering works without waiting to see if they're actually needed. Quite clearly, the reason the Council's traffic officers are so determined to press ahead with those destructive works is the desperate urge to spend the first £100 million of public funding. Without which the next tranche of 200 million will not be made available. They're just not admitting. And it has to be wrong, worse than wrong, wicked, to spend public money in a way that will actually do harm, just in order to obtain more public money. So will the elected representatives on this board please have the courage and good sense to set these awful plans aside, at least until the outcome of the traffic reduction measures proposed elsewhere have been studied and evaluated.
I don't know if you want to add anything, Bob, or I'll make a couple of comments. Well, if you respond to this question and then if you pick up the other questions in your wider introduction.
I think we assume this question would come up under the Milton and additional items. Chair, I'm comfortable with dealing with that. I think. Sorry. Speak up. Can you hear me now? Yes? Okay, sorry about that. I think I'd want to take the opportunity to make it absolutely clear that it's definitely not the case that we're pursuing these schemes simply to get the money spent. That's absolutely not the case. The objectives of the City Deal are absolutely clear, clearly set out, clearly adopted by the City Deal Board, and they are related not just to the current situation, but to the future growth and the local plans and the development that will take place on the edge of the city, and the importance of getting people into the city from those new developments. It's absolutely crucial to the success of the local plan that we achieve that. These schemes were amongst those assessed for prioritisation under Tranche 1 under the assessment criteria that looked at all the benefits of the schemes and the benefits in linking to jobs and housing, and that's why they were selected to go forward. We're quite clear on that, and that's why we are moving them forward. I think it's also important to recognise, and it's interesting, the debate on the substantive item here is not about whether we should do something, it's about what we should do. So there's an acknowledgement across the piece that something must be done about congestion. And we must sort out congestion, we must sort out public transport. And we're actually arguing about the detail of that, not the principle, which I think is a positive thing. So there's a recognition from everybody that there's something has to be done. Clearly, in all of these situations, there are winners and losers, and there are pluses and minuses in all of them. And that's what the board has to deliberate on and decide on all of these items today. And the officers can only put the evidence in front of them, and people can have their say about these things. So it's really important to understand that point. I think the other thing to understand in relation to Milton Road and Histon Road is that we're not actually deciding today to implement anything. What we're deciding is to move these projects forward to the next stage of detailed development, to start answering some of the difficult questions that are being asked, and start beginning to make some of the difficult decisions that are going to have to be made about what takes priority on these routes. We're not going to implement either of these schemes on the current programme at the earliest until 2018. Our recommendation on the access strategy would actually by that point have implemented the experiment on the big congestion control points. So as we move forward with the developments of all these schemes in parallel, we'll be able to look at how the modelling works together. And at the point we're actually taking a decision to implement either Milton and Histon Road, we should already have implemented the peak congestion control points and can take a view about how they want. What's being asked of you by Mr. Nisbet is that we do nothing on Milton and Histon Road. We just hope for the best, that the peak congestion control points and workplace parking deliver everything that needs to be delivered, and if they don't, we pick up and start again, and we've lost 3 or 4 years in the process. What is quite clear is that every city that has grappled with congestion, however they've done it, be it congestion charging, be it control points, be it restriction, still has congestion. They've managed it, they've improved it in the city centres, they've got the public transport working, they've still got an element of congestion within those cities. Nobody's actually cracked the problem and got zero congestion. So our advice as officers is we have to move forward on all fronts simultaneously, and as these schemes develop, see how they mesh together and refine them accordingly.
And if I can add, because it's a board responsibility, when we began last year, about 15 months ago, and before then, we and the Assembly had a thorough discussion about how to look at the priorities for the first 5 years. We are creatures of the funding and the way it's shaped. If we had 300, 500 million up front, we might do things a different way. But within that budget, it was agreed by the board and the Assembly that Milton and Histon Road, along with the A428, and also the area around Addenbrooks, would be priorities. We'd got a price in terms of trying to, say, tackle Newmarket Road that would have spent £100 million all by itself. So the proposal that came forward was both to make progress there, make progress on cycling investment, and the necessary need for the board to take out to the public proposals on tackling peak time congestion. Now, however you may view the current schemes, there has been a process. We have identified priorities, and backing up what Bob has said, we see resolving the problems of this city and the needs of this city and South Cambridgeshire as being a package of a range of measures which include both addressing in turn the needs of people getting in and out of the city while still meeting the needs of the people who live on those roads, as well as citywide measures, as well as investing in cycling, as well as making our city centre far better, as well as tackling that peak time congestion. So we do not believe, and it has been suggested by some, that the congestion charge alone will sort out the city's problems. We do not accept that. So we believe that there is a need for both citywide measures to reduce the number of cars coming down that would otherwise come down Histon Road, Milton Road, Madingley Road, Hills Road, and all the others, as well as looking at the way that those roads are designed. So we will come on to Histon and Milton Road later. We know that the residents' association feel strongly about it. I don't particularly feel that a couple of the reports that are before us fully represent some of the thinking that's gone into reviewing the comments from residents. It's not that it hasn't happened, it's just that the way some of the reports have written, if I was resident, I would feel, well, where are they assessing some of the consultation that's happened? There is behind this full consultation reports. So in simple terms, the simplest part of my message is there is a package of measures, particularly a double act of both local measures and tackling and reducing the number of cars coming into this city that would otherwise come in 5-10 years' time. So that's our position as a board. We are not money-grabbing, trying to just rush for the money. We are thinking ahead. We want to have a long-term plan for transport for this city.
You've got selective hearing and a blinkered view.
That's your view.
That's all our view.
Okay, right. Well, we're now going to talk about a pretty critical issue, which is the measures that are before us in terms of a series of proposals, which are then to be taken for discussion with the public if agreed. So if, Bob, you could introduce this item and at the same time perhaps pick up a couple of points that Robin Pellew and Barbara Taylor made.
Thank you, Chair. I shall keep this as brief as I can, and if I'm not going into detail, if there are questions that you want to ask me, I'm more than happy to take those questions, but I shall skirt over some of the detail as we go through. The background, obviously, to this is the call for evidence exercise and report that you received in January, which gathered a great deal of evidence and information and suggestions from the public, and as I said a few moments ago, the absolutely clear message from that was that a need for action, a need to address congestion, a need to get public transport working, a need to have better cycle facilities, etc. So that's the sort of almost unanimous view of the respondents to the call for evidence. I think that's a very important thing. As I say, we perhaps argue about the detail of how that's done, but the push for something to be done is very, very strong. We've then, working with our consultants, done a huge amount of work to analyse, filter, consider all the different things put forward, as well as the long list we had already developed with our consultants of potential measures that could be taken. And I will cut through all of that process to the fact that we've then arrived at a congestion reduction package that is set out in bullet point form at recommendation 3B. I think most people would take the first three of those items as absolutely yes, why not? I hope they would. So if I'll move straight on to peak congestion control points and why we have developed that option. And essentially, almost from the start in looking at congestion, this goes back to work we've done in 2007, 2008, there have always been two things on the table. Do you go with congestion charging, or do you go with some form of other restriction on access and control? Essentially what you are doing is deciding who it is you're not going to allow to drive their cars down certain streets. That's what it comes down to, because that's the ultimate. We can talk about those space reallocation of the man management. It means saying to some people, you're not going to drive down these streets on particular roads. You're not going to drive down particular streets on particular roads.
Could you speak up? Can you speak slower? We can hear every word of the chairman and we can hear almost none of his mention.
He's not pointing the right way.
He might not be, but he can speak slower.
I shall move the microphone. That sounds louder to me anyway. I'll move the microphone, so I'm sorry about that. We'll improve it. Okay. Also conscious that there's a lot to be got through, so hence I'm perhaps speaking quite faster than I should. I will try and slow down and remind myself to do that. The reason we have the two essential options in front of us that manage congestion, core of both of those is actually, as I was saying, that we have to say to some people, you're not going to be able to drive on certain streets at certain times. That's the only way we're going to get the congestion down. That's the nub of the issue, and how we actually go about that process and how we do that is the nub of the issue. We have recommended as officers going down the road of the peak congestion control points, coupled with the workplace parking limit, which I will touch on a bit later. Why have we gone down that option? Well, in analysing what's been done elsewhere, what's been successful elsewhere, and what the problems are in Cambridge, we've concluded that this is the better of the two options. I'm not saying congestion charging would work, we just think this is better. I think it's more equitable, and we think it can be delivered much more quickly, and those are key points. When you look at congestion charging in London, they've had to continually increase the charge. Congestion levels remain pretty much as they have been. Okay, they've reallocated road space to buses and cycling, but they've still got congestion, and that was in a situation where they already had good public transport, and already had the majority of people coming into that area by means other than the car. When we look at the situation in Cambridge, the majority of people commuting in from outside are doing so by car. Yes, in Cambridge, travel to work levels by car are quite low, but coming in from outside, they're quite high. And without having a really good, strong, robust, in place before it happens, public transport offer, that's going to be very difficult to introduce congestion charging. And if you actually say, well, what does it take to make that public transport really good? You look at where public transport goes wrong. And it goes wrong because it gets stuck in certain streets in Cambridge. Hills Road in particular. And we've put the data in front of the board in the past about delays to buses in Hills Road. At the most extreme, it can take kind of bus an hour to get from the station to the city centre. Okay, that's the most extreme. It's not always like that, but that is consistently the worst road for buses in Cambridge. So actually, you need to crack that problem if you're going to get buses running. You've got to get public transport reliable. So the approach we've taken is actually to say, let's put these congestion control points at key points in the network. Some of those are on the Hills Road, and you can't just hit one street because everyone would just drive round. You therefore have to hit a range of other streets as well. So we've expanded that Hills Road, Mill Road, Coldham's Lane and East Road to say effectively not get a huge displacement effect, but actually get that mode shift that we talked about earlier, people shifting from car to other modes. And we've also looked at shutting key points on the Ring Road, again East Road, Queen's Road, Grange Road. Now the analysis we've done suggests that that would free up these key routes for buses to move and for more space to be given to cycling and pedestrians. Also, it's something that's relatively quick and simple to do. We can do it under experimental traffic regulation order with equipment that we've already got contracts in place for ANPR cameras, enforcement, etc. We can do that quite quickly. So we think that can be effective and it can be quick. We also think that people who've been most disadvantaged by it, people who have to get out of their cars, are most likely those making relatively short journeys within the city. Now, first of all, they're contributing the most to the congestion problem in terms of the proportion of their journey, but also they've got the alternatives in place. They've got city bus services, they've got the ability to cycle and the ability to walk in most. There will be people who don't have that option, but there are, in the main they are. So it has more impact on city people than trips from outside the city. People from outside the city haven't got the public transport. That's why we've gone down this route and why we think this is the best option. Clearly the point has already been made about the need to raise revenue for public transport. We'd absolutely agree with that. We've had very strong commitments from the bus operators. They will respond if we can reduce congestion. They will invest in more vehicles. They will get more drivers. They will increase the frequency. The services will become more efficient anyway if we can get rid of the congestion on those key routes, but they're prepared to top that up. There will still be gaps in the network. Some of the more rural services around the city, what we call orbital services, perhaps services early in the morning, later in the evening. So our revenue stream to support that would be extremely useful. We've had considerable discussions with Nottingham City Council and used the workplace parking levies, as was said earlier by Councillor Heckford. They have directly targeted that at public transport interventions to support people getting to work. We would be wanting to do the same. So we see the peak congestion control points as being a more deliverable option, and an option that is in the round more equitable. Winners and losers with all these options, but in the round more equitable, and that's why we recommended it ahead of congestion charging. It's not to say congestion charging doesn't work, it's just that we think this is more deliverable and fair on those criteria. So, Chair, I'll stop there and just then take questions.
Okay, thank you, Bob. Any questions people want to raise or comments people want to make on this? I note that Roger said that I think we note the request from the Assembly and need to follow it up, that we do need to, as part of the documentation, if we agree this, to produce a comparison with congestion charging. It may well be that rather than have perhaps the kind of debate we're having about Europe, that we might actually sit down and agree with the people who propose congestion charging at least some of the facts and figures, so that the two options are also put in a parallel way. So there's that. Any comments people or questions people want to ask? Mark Reed from the Local Enterprise Partnership.
Chair, thank you. Apologies for my standing in today for the previous colleague, but I'm here really as the Enterprise Partnership, which is a business-led private sector organisation. We're supportive of these measures moving forward. This was debated at the Assembly, and business colleagues debated it there, and I won't rehearse that. Business basically wants to see some action, it wants to see something change and move forward. As far as business is concerned, it certainly doesn't see this as the final solution. And moreover, work-based parking levy would need to fully involve business in its consideration and indeed in its spend. And it would also need to do exactly as you said. It would need to understand that as opposed to an overall congestion charging proposition.
Thank you. Other comments? Francis Burke.
Well, can I ask you more about on-street parking controls? My mailbox has been pretty full with people wanting more residence parking. I recognise it's not totally a responsibility of the City Board because it's the Cambridge Joint Area Committee, but could you just talk for 2 seconds on that? Thank you.
I believe the Cambridge Joint Area Committee met yesterday. I've not had a chance to catch up with officers dealing with that because I've been dealing with other matters, but essentially the current situation is that the County Council policy, the County Council is the highway authority, the transport authority responsible for these things. Current policy has evolved over a period of time, and is that we will introduce residence parking schemes where there's a majority of residents in favour. And that can often be quite a challenging situation and quite divisive of communities. The most recent being the Defrevel area in Cambridge, which was done 2-3 years ago, and was quite, let's say, quite challenging for the local community with many pros and many against. It's a lot of issues. So the Cambridge Joint Area Committee is a subcommittee of the Highways and Community Infrastructure Committee at the County Council, but it has on it city councillors as well as county councillors, has decided to review that policy, and I believe debated and discussed that yesterday, but I've not got feedback on the debate. I don't know if any of my colleagues behind me are any more advised than I am. But as I said, current policy is where residents want it, we'll introduce it.
Councillor Bates.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Can I start with, I did attend the Assembly, I did listen to all the debate, which was, in my view, a very constructive and useful debate. My question actually, I think, is to the officers in respect of the peak congestion control points. Perhaps a little bit more detail, please, for myself and the members of the board would be useful at this point. I'm thinking particularly about how they will be introduced, how they will be monitored, about the trials and things of that nature. So a little bit more detail, I think, on that would be useful, please.
Sorry, Bob.
Thank you, Chair. The control points themselves will be very similar to the rising bollard control points for what we call the Cambridge Core Scheme in Cambridge, which was introduced starting in 1997 in a phase where it saw a reduction in traffic. At the boat shift we've talked about, we did achieve with those about 15% overall reduction in car traffic in the city centre. They look very similar to those. We are in the process of moving from using rising bollards to using automatic number plate recognition camera for those control points. The rising bollard technology and the detection technology of the rising bollard is now rather old and needs to be replaced anyway, so we're moving towards a camera enforcement. So they would look very similar to the control points for the core scheme, except they'd be controlled by cameras. So there would unfortunately there does need to be a degree of signing and a degree of visual intrusion with those signs. There would also need to be good advanced signing of when those were operating with variable message type signs that would change when the restrictions are in place. In terms of the introduction, the process we are suggesting that this really lends itself to an experimental process. We're suggesting that for two reasons. One is, it is difficult to accurately predict behavioural change. You can build traffic models and certain assumptions in traffic models about what people will do, and you can go so far, but ultimately this does come down to how much people will be prepared to change mode, to change to bike, to walking, to bus. And you can only go so far with that modelling. We could spend the next 10 years modelling it and analysing it and doing stated preference surveys and all the rest of it. But people have done that in the past. Some of it was any more reliable than the initial modelling. So we say it lends itself to an experiment on that basis, so we can actually do it and see how people do respond. That also allows people to judge for themselves individually and respond as to how well it's worked, rather than trying to second guess how we work and respond accordingly. It also lends itself, and it's relatively simple to implement. Cameras, the signs, etc. Are all stuff we will be doing anyway, or we have the facility to do anyway. Relatively straightforward to implement that. In the back office, again, we already have in place a back office for bus lane enforcement, for example, which this effectively comes under. These would legally be bus gates. Comes under that same enforcement regime. So the stuff is all there to do that. So we see it lending itself to that experimental process. The way an experimental order process works is the experiment is brought in, it runs for a period of 18 months. Within the first 6 months, people have the opportunity to respond, to comment, to put in formal objection, and you then have the remaining 12 months to make up your mind as to whether to make it permanent or not. If you do nothing, it falls. After 18 months, we have to take it all out again. You have to make a decision within the 18 months if you want it to stay. There is scope within that experimental process for making some change and some amendment. The extent you can make that amendment before you set the experiment running again is debatable. But if, for example, we said we're going to have it operating from 7:30 to 9:30, then we decided we'd make it go from 8 till 9:30, that's probably the kind of thing you could do. Change it the other way, make it more onerous, probably more challenging. So again, it lends itself to that experimental process, and it gives you some flexibility for fine-tuning. As I say, I think it's an ideal opportunity for an experiment.
Thank you. Any more? So, anybody else want to express a view on it? So, well, I think I'd like to get a view from South Cambridgeshire on the proposal, because I'm going to give a view.
So I think the view from South Cambridgeshire is that it would agree with the dual concept that we need some form of demand management and that we need some view of revenue raising opportunity to get the buses travelling better. South Cambridgeshire debated this, I think it was in about 2013. There was a resolution on the topic of congestion charging, and the District Council came down not in favour of congestion charging. I think it was roughly 2013. I think the demand management measures that are being proposed by officers make sense. We've debated this to a certain extent in South Cambs, and I think that is the view. As for more buses from the rural centres into the centre of Cambridge, that is absolutely something that South Cambridgeshire wants badly and wants as fast as possible. And I think the revenue-raising measures that the workplace parking levy could potentially bring are exactly what people would want to hear. And for that reason, I would certainly support this. I asked a particular question about on-street parking, largely because I've had a lot of emails in my postbag from city residents who clearly want to favour that as well. I think there are other measures, the Smart City Cambridge measures, I think I'm very interested in as well, and I think we're particularly coming back to them at the next session of Assembly and Board meetings.
Anything?
Well, I was going to add some of my thought processes, Mr. Chairman, really. I think, apologies to members of the public, but I'm looking at page 2310, for those that have it. Okay, and just to give those that haven't got it, this is talking about future housing and economic growth, which is planned for the Greater Cambridgeshire area. And it goes on to talk about the transport network will get worse, okay, which I think lots of people fully understand, which really leads me, I think, really to the page 25, number 24, which is about the sort of criteria in respect to the call for evidence, which is about value for money, fairness, etc. All of that came to my view that the package that we've got, and it is a package which is laid out in the report of B, is a reasonable package that we find ourselves today. I support this package going forwards. It will not be easy to fully understand the congestion points until the trial goes ahead, and my view for that is that can be looked at a later date when we actually see the results of that. Workplace parking levy, we would have to engage with business about where they see that revenue being spent, and it will be interesting to hear businesses' views on that. I'm also keen on the smart technology, as has already been expressed, okay, and about travel planning, because what we're talking here about is actually change. And change is always difficult to actually put across, particularly to members of the public, particularly members who live in the city or outside of the city. But what we're looking at actually is about changing people's behaviour, and that perhaps they won't drive in, they would perhaps not drive in, but they perhaps would get on better public transport or cycle. So what we're talking about here is that shift, which we have experienced in Cambridge when we did the core scheme, which is also in the report. So I support what is before us today. It was duly voted on at the Assembly, which I listened to and heard the result of that. And I believe, from recollection, that was 8 in favour and 3 against. So therefore I'm heartened by the fact that the Assembly have debated that fully and support this going forward. And I will support this going forward, Mr. Chairman.
Do you want to add anything?
Well, I would simply add that I've had the benefit of having seen the very large amount of detailed modelling work that Bob and his team have done on the plan to close certain roads, and a number of different options have been looked at in detail, and the one that is being proposed actually has an amazing effect of balancing the traffic in the most optimal way. Now we have to find out if it works, and we have to get cars off the road to make space for the buses. If we can get the cars off the roads, the buses can get through, and we'll have a better public transport system. So in many ways, a number of these points are linked together. We can't do one and not the other. They're all interrelated. And the one thing we can't predict, which is why an experiment is needed, is how many people will actually give up their car and get on a bus. That is the one question that we can't answer.
Well, to add a further, probably the final contribution, the package that, as others have said, is in paragraph 28 on page 26, does start by having assurance that extra and improved bus services can be put in place. Part of the improvement that I support would be facilitated by the fact that the measures as a package will reduce the number of cars coming in at the peak time and thereby enable the bus operators to operate both a service that people can get on and rely relatively that they will arrive within a quick time and a reliable journey time to their destination. It is the case at the moment that buses get stuck, particularly in one part of the city, for up to an hour, including in the afternoon peak. And as a result, people do not get on buses. Teenagers going to Hills Road or Long Road from Cottenham persuade their parents to drive them in, or even get a car rather than use public transport, because it is not an hour and 50 minutes isn't an adequate time. We accept that there's a comparison going to be made with other routes to achieve this, but we believe that the bus operators will improve the services. We would expect both to use the workplace parking levy in discussions with business to evidence that what we're doing makes a real difference, for some of that money to be invested in improved buses. But I won't name particular things because some of that will come out, I think, in the discussions with the public. We believe and have evidence, as is said, in traffic modelling, which we will be very happy to share and to be challenged, to be looked at, the impact of these measures, subject to what the response is, what combination of hours and different interventions will reduce the number of cars in the centre of the city. It's effectively an expansion of the core scheme. It looks at the city and it says it isn't able to cope with traffic, it isn't able to cope with the number of delivery vehicles that come in, particularly at peak times. That there will be a discussion about, well, exactly who goes through the congestion control points. There will be a discussion about technology linking this to the other schemes and smart technology about signalling. So there will be more detail than is in this report shared, and there will be the opportunity to look at the other options, including the fact that there are reports on how the congestion charge would work from previous analysis. So certainly for my part, having looked at this is a measure that takes the pressure off some of the radial roads that come into the city, that the City Deal Board will probably look to put in place an extra package of measures for the time that it's implemented, and we will then be also consulting over a period of perhaps up to 3 years on the workplace parking levy to make sure that is both fair and that business have a big say about how that's implemented. It does raise a chunk of money, and that, whilst the city deal has got capital funding, it doesn't have revenue funding on an ongoing basis. So on that basis, and on behalf of my council, we will support this going out to get public responses. So, are there any other points? So we've got in front of us on page 21 a series of recommendations, and also picking up the couple of points that Councillor Hickford made on behalf of the Assembly. So we note the call for evidence, and we agree this package that's been put forward. We note the consultation, so I refer members of the public and also members here to Appendix D, which lays out the consultation principles that will be applied. We will be consulting in July, or we'll be discussing this in the public environment and seeking views from the public in July through to October, and that's specified in paras 79 to 84 of the document, and we'll be looking to analyse the responses and bring back a report to this board in January 2017. So on that basis, can I ask, with the other recommendation of the trial implementation in para D, for the board, all those in favour of that set of recommendations? And any against? Okay, so that's carried. Thank you. So we move on, and we come to item Sorry?
Could we have the numbers to vote?
Well, in the constitution that's set up for the board, Dorcas, there's 3 voting members, strictly, which are the 3 councils. And I think that's as much to do with the oversight of the money. But I think the board unanimously supports it going forward for consultation.
That's certainly the case. This has my
for the public discussion in July.
It's just that I don't have a vote, so I feel a bit guilty about putting my hand up.
Okay. So I hope that's...
Thank you.
That may not be totally clear, but I hope it at least answers the question. Thank you. Right. Item 10 is on Histon Road measures, bus priority, walking, cycling measures. We've got several public questions, and I would propose to take them in a few groupings. So we've got 8 questions in total. And first, if I could take in a group of 3, Edward Lee, Yazan, Austin and Lynn Hyatt. So if Edward Lee could come up to ask your question first, Edward. Thank you.
Can you give us the question number, please?
This is so we've got questions 1, 32 and then back to 31. All questions will be answered. We're just taking them slightly different order. So we're grouping them by subject. So first question in the head of this item is Edward Lee.
Thank you, Chairman. I have abbreviated my question. Please will you explain why and how it was decided at the outset that whatever else the City Deal does, it will build bus lanes. And I emphasise bus lanes, not bus priority. Mr Ming has recently tweeted a link to a report by a lobby group for the bus industry which claims an average saving of less than 1 minute per kilometre of bus lane. Officers also posted a Transport Research Laboratory paper that concluded bus journey times were decreased by 2 minutes. No consistent results regarding patronage were obtained. Modelling of Milton and Histon roads indicates a trivial 3 or 4 minute saving on some journey times. Do you really believe bus lanes represent best value for money, or constitute a step change in the attractiveness of bus travel? If you sincerely want better bus journeys once you've decongested the city centre, you need to address 2 areas: access to bus services and ease of interchanging. Our papers on travel hubs and bus services set out how you can address these. Will you be bold and reject officers' recommendation to rush ahead with bus lane schemes built on the Histon roads, or will you do the wrong thing just because it's easier than to do the right thing?
Well, if I could ask Bob Mingus to start, and then we'll add our view. Sorry, I'll take, if I can take the other questions as well, Edward. So, Izan, Councillor Tunnicliffe is the new Izan Austin. Okay. Councillor Tunnicliffe.
Just this afternoon. Thank you, Chair. I assumed that the board would agree that bus lane schemes on roads like Milton Road and Histon Road should be undertaken only as a last resort because of the damage they inflict on the local environment and community life. Since you've not yet assessed what impact the proposed congestion reduction package will have on journey times on these roads, how is it possible to conclude that these schemes are essential? May I say that I hope that you will give a direct answer and not the answer which has sometimes been given, that it's a well-known fact or it's obvious that these schemes are needed. Thank you.
And third at this point, if Lynn Hyatt could ask question 31, please.
Hello. I'll be short. When I was looking the other day at this question, I realized that it was in September of 2015 that I actually asked the same question. I don't guess I think I've had an answer, and it's really much like what the previous speakers have had. For a long time, it seems clear that the questions are being heard, but not particularly answered. All the research and work that residents and experts have done over the past year, giving up vast swathes of their personal time at no cost to the taxpayer, to propose workable, sustainable, and more imaginative alternatives to bus lanes, seem to have been largely ignored. People are asking once again, why are all the other better ideas for spending Tranche 1 money being overlooked in favour of bus lanes? Thank you.
And Bob, start. Sorry, sure.
Sorry, I thought there was another question, Mr. Chairman.
No.
No? Okay,
No.
thank you.
Thank you, Chairman. Mr. Lee drew from the Greener Journeys report, which I would commend to the board actually. I think it's important to realise this was actually used by Professor David Begg, who's an extremely well-respected figure in transport circles, former advisor to the TfL board, currently advising Transport for Greater Manchester, advisor to the DFT, former transport chair of Edinburgh City Council, and introduced a large range of bus lane schemes, so a man to be taken seriously. And the report clearly sets out that the absolute #1 factor that is influencing bus patronage is buses being stuck in congestion. It's absolutely clear about that. And while I would agree with Mr. Lee that it's important to get all the other things right, and I would add more things to his list, about interchange, about access to services, about real-time information, about quick fare systems, the report clearly shows that unless you free buses up from congestion, none of those things will make much difference, because it's about reliability of bus services that is what matters. The report also contains some very useful case studies of places such as Edinburgh and indeed Brighton that show where bus lanes have been very effective. And whilst yes, there are averages and conclusions that can be drawn from various studies, and there's unfortunately not as much information as one might wish about bus lanes and where they work and where they don't work, it is clear that where they're put in the right locations, dealing with traffic congestion, they are effective. And of course, we don't need to look too much further than the guided busway, which has delivered reliable bus transit and has hit all its targets for bus patronage in Cambridgeshire. So we'd say the evidence is actually pretty strong for bus lanes, and the Greener Journeys support report is very timely and actually supports the case for bus lanes. A lot of people, I would acknowledge, have put a lot of time thinking about alternatives and proposing alternatives. We have looked at those. They have varying degrees of merit, but none of them actually gets the bus out of congestion quite as effectively as bus lanes and giving buses priority at traffic signal junctions, which are the two main elements of both of these schemes. So that is why, in our professional opinion, bus lanes are what is needed and what is needed here.
If there is 1 or 2 minutes, how will that be effective?
Right, can I come back on the point about time savings? I said this at the assembly. I don't think it's quite realised that major traffic schemes, major highway schemes, often actually come down to quite small time savings for the individual, but that does add up. It adds up over days, over weeks, over years to significant benefits to them. And a 3-minute saving is actually a pretty substantial saving in the proportion of journey time. And if that was all we were doing in the city, we were just doing one bus lane, I'd have some sympathy with the comments that have been made just now. But parcel that up with the guided busway that's there already, that gives that really reliable journey from St Ives to the top end of Milton Road and to the top end of Fiston Road, and the work we're doing in the city centre to free up the queue routes in the city centre, and you've actually got a cumulative package that gets buses moving right through the entire route, and as has been seen with the busway, will attract passengers. We had 5 buses an hour leaving St Ives before the busway was built. That's not, in the morning peak, that's now something like 17 buses an hour. And that's all commercial, no subsidy to do that. That shows that we get the model right, you get the patronage there. The evidence is there, unambiguous from the busway.
Councillor Bates, and we'll add to a couple of points because I think there's a couple of angles on the questions to address. Councillor Bates.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'm aware of that particular work and that particular project which Ms. Mavis refers to. Can I be assured that this is on the CityDeal website, and can that be made available, please? If it's not, can that be put on as a matter of urgency, please? and obviously can that be circulated to particularly the questionnaire, the people that have asked the questions. So I'm aware of that report, but I think it would be very useful for other people to see exactly what did he say.
Yeah, I mean, we were asked to put up what evidence we've got about bus lanes, and obviously there's still a debate about it and different views, but we've put up there, I think, a couple of items on the City Deal Board website. We're not relying on bus lanes, but bus lanes that link up to traffic junctions and the increase of use of bus priority through junctions, because there's very limited use currently of that in the city, but some good use of it will enable buses to flow. We're not proposing, when we come to the Milton Road item, or in terms of Histon Road either, we're not proposing bus lanes both ways, except in one part, which I think there's some further discussion is merited. So I think as a City Deal Board, we're not relying on bus lanes as a core part of the strategy. But if you look at the issue of bus reliability, and if we freed up the city centre, I appreciate there's been some astute photographers who've sent us pictures of Milton Road with sort of butterflies and no cars at various times, but at times it does get heavily congested, and when there's a new Cambridge North station, there'll be significant flows of traffic, and particularly buses coming in. In terms of discussions about with bus operators about how would they operate if we do free up the city centre, they want to run more bus services and more express bus services. Some of those would need to come in through the radials. So bus lanes by themselves are not a panacea. We welcome the contributions people have given on some of the other issues, including the Smarter Transport Group, Smarter Cambridge Transport Group. But we believe the appropriate use of bus lanes is part of the solution to the city's problems. It does have a direct impact on residents. We appreciate that. The next group of questions we have is there's three together we're going to take because there's some linkages. Jerry Rose on consultation responses, number 17. Alison Murray, number 20, on the different options, maximum and something. And if I pronounce it right, Jane Kreuzer on environmental assessment. So, Jerry Rose, please.
Yes, it's all.
That should go red. No, it's fine. On the front bit. There you go.
My question is about Milton Road and Histon Road consultations, which were undertaken in February and were eventually put on the City Deal website on the 1st of June, just a few hours before the Joint Assembly meeting. These files have, of course, been available to the City team for nearly 3 months. The submissions from individuals, residents associations and other groups I have looked at, and these are provided in 19 different PDF files. Together they are 1,400 pages of emails, letters, social media, and they represent more than 500 contributors. This is a very substantial amount of data. However, the PDF files that have been constructed by the team are not in a searchable PDF format. So, for example, I can look for my contribution, but can't find it easily. One's left wondering how it's possible for these written submissions to be properly analysed and taken into account. I can find few, if any, explicit references to these data in the proposals that are before the Executive Board today. My question asks the City Deal team, therefore, to specify whether these 1,400 pages of data have in fact been drawn upon at all, and if so, what methods have been used to ensure that the analysis of the data is systematic and it represents a true picture of the expressed public opinion. For example, what's been done to ensure that submissions from residents' associations and groups which represent substantial aggregations of people, have been given appropriate weight.
Thank you, Mr. Rose. Who's going to respond? Oh, sorry, we're taking three. Excuse me. So Alison Murray's got a second question. Thank you.
Hi, yes, Alison.
Hi, I'm Mary Kavitza, actually, not Alison Murray, but I'll pop up a few times for a few questions. So the first question is from Alison Murray, and it is, given the overwhelmingly negative response from the public to the proposals and the limited benefits to be realised, why are no steps being taken to consider alternative proposals to reduce something and do maximum? They are surely not the only options.
Okay. And the third question on environmental impact assessment is from Jane Cruiser.
So I'll just sit down.
Oh, you are Jane as well.
I am Jane as well. So just a little bit about putting it in context, if I may. There appears to be no environmental impact assessment of the various options proposed for Milton Road. Surely such a project should have had a strategic environmental assessment. The question is, in the report to the board under the heading Climate Change and Environmental, there is a short statement which mentions the potential for the proposed measures to reduce congestion and improve air quality. This seems a short and insufficient statement regarding environmental issues in light of the size of the project. There is no mention anywhere in the report of an environmental baseline and impact assessment study being planned or carried out on this project. Is there a plan to undertake a full environmental assessment and to publish an environmental statement which should cover both construction and operational phases? If not, why not? That's it.
Thank you. To respond to the three questions. So we've got questions 17, 20 and 25. Stuart.
In relation to the consultation, we undertook what was considered to be an extremely extensive process of interrogation and undertaking to look at a huge range of pieces of work that came in and their correspondence. The primary data that came from was from the consultation itself and the filling in of the questionnaires. Those were submitted and analysed, and the reports have been available on the website in relation to those now for some time. Other comments that related to the questionnaire, additional comments, Facebook, email, Twitter, all of the other forms of communication have all been looked at and were added in as part of additional information. That has taken longer and there has been some issues around that. And we are learning all the time in this process, purely on the basis of volume of information. But in all cases, they have been looked at. And we have, in the report, started to sort of break down some of the main themes that develop from it, from a sort of group in effect. So that we do gather and we do take full consideration of all of those comments. In terms of the individuals' comments, they are available for those that wish to see it. Clearly there are some sensitive bits of information there, so we do have to be very careful on just what we can and can't put on the websites. But as I said, we do take this part of the work extremely seriously, and we do consider all those comments that we do receive. Hence, there are changes that we've made to the scheme in the first process of consultation as a direct result of that. In terms of the in terms of the overall proposals, what we didn't just look at do max, do nothing. We did have a number of considerations to take account of during the first part of the development of this scheme, and a number of proposals were put forward. And as a result of that, and again in relation to the consultation, we've reduced the scheme considerably in part by reducing the number of bound terms that we considered as part of the early stages to reflect. But when we go into the report, we talk about the ones that we've kept in. because we consider those to be absolutely crucial to retain the benefits of that scheme. But in terms of other aspects of it, we have actually reduced it in some respects to take full account of what's been said to us. And in terms of environmental consideration, and I will again come on to the details of the scheme, Histon and Milton Road, in terms of full environmental impact, probably are not big enough to achieve the desired results that I think those that are asking for would expect. But instead, when it comes to a project of this kind, what we tend to do is to look at the overall impact of the green infrastructure, the public realm, how we can improve the look of the scheme in the best way possible. So we look to mitigate the environmental impact on the basis of what we can do in terms of the green infrastructure that we have available to us.
Well, and I can add that I know from talking to other people on the board that we have looked at the congestion, the responses that came in on both Histon and Milton Road. We have walked the road, we have travelled the road, we have talked to people, so we've listened to people's responses, and we've also looked at the analysis of the surveys
there was a question about why the PDF files are not searchable.
Okay, is it possible to answer that? That's a fair point, Mr. Rhodes.
Well, I'm not an expert on the analysis of searching PDF files, but I'm pretty sure there are ways of doing it, which I'll look into. But as I said before, this is personal, sensitive information. We have to be very careful just how well that is managed. And as I said, it's taken an awful long time to ensure that we do protect those people that have provided that information.
Councillor Bates?
Perhaps to assist, perhaps it would be beneficial to take that particular question away. I understand what you're saying, okay, about the PDF files. Can I therefore ask that we take that question away, and I will ask the officers to undertake perhaps a more written response to you, because that gets into technology which I'm not that great at always, I must admit, and I think it would be useful for your benefit to actually have a better understanding of the response to that question. So perhaps a bit more response would come to you would be more appropriate.
It is a fact that you can manage 1,400 pages of information if the files are in the proper order. They are not.
That's why I think it would be useful for them to take that question away.
Yeah, I think it was easier for those who were doing the analysis to do the grouping than was possible to produce them. And as one member of the audience has noted, we did have some problems with some of the redaction anyway. So I think if we can give a written response and also put it up on the website, I think if we can make it searchable for these two recent consultations, we will. If not, I think it's certainly a point that we should learn from for further consultations. So I've got two more questions. There's question 4 from...
Excuse me. Sorry, I'm not sure I've got a response.
On the... Sorry.
About the environment impact.
Well, I think the answer, there was an answer, but the answer was that in terms of the environmental impact assessment is quite a detailed process, and these schemes they're not. There's a certain trigger, so these schemes don't require there to be a full environmental impact assessment.
Under Schedule 2
Right.
of the regulations, as you say, this scheme definitely does not need an environmental impact assessment and statement.
Yeah.
Because a lot of organisations do impact assessments even when they aren't a statutory requirement, and I find it really difficult to believe that there isn't one required for this size of scheme. So do you know for definite that we don't need to do one as a statutory requirement?
Well,
that's
I don't know if you want to add anything, Mr. Mingus.
I think it's perhaps worth going back a stage, and the overall transport strategy from which all these schemes are drawn, the Cambridgeshire Joint Transport Strategy, was accompanied by an impact assessment at that time. It's quite high level. Sorry, I'm talking to the chairman, not to the microphone. With the microphone. Get a hang of this. We don't have microphones at the county council.
Speak up.
Cambridge and South Cambridgeshire Joint Transport Strategy, from which the city deal schemes are drawn, which formed the basis of the city deal bid, did have an overarching impact assessment of its impacts. Very high level, but it had an overarching impact, so that is there and in place. Our view is that the scale of these schemes, the Histon Road and Milton Road scheme, are not sufficient to require an environmental impact. Other schemes in the city are doing, such as example, the Canmore to Cambridge scheme, probably is big enough to require an environmental impact assessment.
I mean, I think whilst there's no formal environmental impact statement, we are rightly challenged on the environmental impacts, whether it's the landscaping, the issues of trees and what's going to be the form of trees after the works and in conjunction with any works. We're challenged about impact on travel. So in terms of the challenge on the environmental impacts, I think it's considerable. So I'm an expert on waste and recycling, but my knowledge of the environment tells me that there's a lot of environmental challenges occurring in each of the discussions. Right, I think that's two more. So we've got question 4 from Lillian Rundbland on vision and bus times, including, I think, the number 8 bus, and also 27 from Sean Martin. So if Lillian Rundbland could ask her question, thank you.
Is the mic on?
Just press the button and it should go red. On the box with the sticky velvet with the microphone.
Oh, lovely. Thank you very much.
All right. Thanks for coming.
Okay. My question to the board meeting of June 9th is in regards to improved service with City 8 bus along the Cambridge-Histon Road, as well as the villages north of A14. Although there were some improvements time-wise going into the city, the long waiting times for return trips are just as lengthy as previously. The residents also requested that the guided bus should make one stop along Histon Road. And clearly shown on the June 2nd meeting's agenda, the guided bus will cross Histon Road and continue into Darwin Green, and there will be no improvements for the residents. We are presently circulating a petition to reinstate the City 8 bus to the full-length route, covering the rail station and Addenbrooke's Hospital. The vision of the City Deal project is to improve transports for the good of the residents. What action will the City Deal board take to live up to the transport vision, which is connecting people and places for the residents along Histon Road?
Thank you, Mr. Question 27 from Sean Martin about Victoria Road. Thank you.
Do I need to press a button?
No, you've got it.
Okay, thank you. This concerns restricting traffic in both directions between the Histon and Victoria roads. Treasury now mandates considering options when managing public money. On this specific point, no alternative has yet been considered. What plans have you for considering the option to improve the current junction without restricting turning between these two roads as an alternative? Only by comparing the options can you provide justification to the public that this proposed restriction is necessary. This is in the context of 4 key observations. For the current proposal in the morning rush hour, firstly, there are serious safety concerns for cyclists travelling from Huntington Road to Victoria Road, crossing an unregulated flow of 430 vehicles an hour on Histon Road. Secondly, serious delays to buses held in traffic on Victoria Road when you approach the Giveaway Junction. Thirdly, only 6% of the traffic on Histon Road turns left into Victoria Road, thus questioning the rationale for the restriction. And finally, the current junction can be improved by much better coordination between the 2 sets of traffic lights, eliminating the blocking of the yellow box, and while also allowing traffic to turn from Victoria Road to Histon Road. These are based on many observations I've made at this junction, and I volunteer to help you consider the alternative. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Martin. So, an answer to Lillian Rundbland's question particularly about the City 8, and then we can also perhaps contribute about extra bus services.
I think I'd like to start just by clarifying that figure 1 in item 10 shows a link that's been provided for buses to the North West Cambridge and Darwin Green development. It's not the expectation that the county buses will go that way. It's the expectation of the additional services that will come from the North West Cambridge development through Darwin Green and on rounds to CRC, the Science Park and the new railway station. So starting an orbital service around Cambridge. I think the plan has been misinterpreted. Perhaps if we use that plan again, we'll make it clear what that is showing in the future.
That's the plan on page 57.
That's correct, yes.
Right,
It shows
so-
development link. That's a
So
link through the
57 should what should it read? Additional bus service, or
that development link will have additional bus services on it, is the expectation.
I refer to the second meeting. Then it was agenda item 9, figure 1, page 53.
yeah, okay, 53.
So that's the assembly pit numbering rather than the numbering slightly
You've got
different.
different numbers.
Yeah, always.
It's caused me a headache as well. The other point about the actual bus services on Histon Road and the City 8 service, which, for those who don't know, used to run right through down to Addenbrooks and Stagecoach because of congestion in the city centre, have split that back into a separate service and changed in the city centre. I think that goes to the nub of what we were talking about in the earlier item about the need to sort out Hills Road and get that moving. We'd certainly want to see that as well. And I know from discussions with Stagecoach, if the congestion wasn't there, that is what they would do. So I think we can be at one on that.
I've also had some discussions with Stagecoach about, well, how many more bus services would you run if the city centre congestion measures were implemented, and they would run more bus services through. So they do cut the bus services at the city centre currently simply because of the congestion that is hit the other side of the centre.
They also increased the prices for 2 changes.
And that's another challenge.
Yeah. Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Then the question to Sean, the answer to Sean's question.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. The Victoria Junction is a complex junction, we know that. It's going to take some sorting out for us to get to what we consider to be the best solution there. And we are, in the paper that we have here today, we're talking about looking at possibilities of modelling that junction with and without the junction closures. It will remain a signal junction, just to make that clear. So we would clearly have to make sure that any benefits to cyclists is included to make that junction work safely and properly. So there isn't any intention to make it worse, that's for sure. But we just need some more time to do some modelling to see just exactly how well that junction works with and without that closure proposed.
Can I just, I mean, we'll come on to it in the discussion, but firstly, it should be possible, Mr. Walmsley, for you to meet Mr. Martin, because you're not far away from the junction as well, both where you work and where he lives. And secondly, yeah, we'll have some discussion about the role of the local liaison forums in terms of discussing some of these issues. So
yeah, absolutely.
So if you want to contact Sean Walmsley at cambridgeshire.gov.uk, then there's a meeting. If you're willing, as you said, Sean, you would be willing to contribute. Okay.
Sorry. I'll clear with Graham the contact details afterwards.
Sorry.
I'll clarify with Graham afterwards the contact details.
That'd be good. Thank you, Mr. Martin. Okay, so I think it wings round. Did you want to add?
Well, I was thinking of the local councillor.
Sorry, I had tried to do a hand signal earlier on. So if I could invite Councillor Hipkin to contribute, and if there are other councillors who want to contribute this afternoon, if they indicate they can contribute at the appropriate items. Councillor Hipkin.
First of all, I'd like to say that I think the revised proposals show some willingness on the part of the City Deal officers and board and assembly and all the rest of it to meet some of our objections. I'm extremely pleased that the no right turn into Warwick Road is now finally ruled out. With respect to the Victoria Road junction and making Victoria Road one way, I do think that it's a requirement that you indicate what routes, alternative routes, drivers are expected to take. I think that, you know, for my part, looking at how I would get down the Huntingdon Road on which I live, or close to which I live, wanting to make my way towards the east of the city or the south, I find that I have to undertake a huge diversion. I've got to go down Castle Hill, Castle Street, and then turn left into Chesterton Lane, Chesterton Road, and then come back up the Victoria Road if that's the way So I think the diversions, the effect of the diversions has got to be very, very closely studied indeed. I think the closure of the Histon Road to traffic coming up the Victoria Road is a very, very controversial move indeed, because what will happen is that in order for drivers to resume their journey north along the Histon Road, they're going to rat run along residential streets such as Priory Road and Canterbury Street and so on. They'll just simply go a little way up the Huntingdon Road to comply with the requirement, and then they will cut through to resume their journey on the Histon Road going north. So I think the effects of these measures need to be very, very carefully studied indeed. That's all I have to say.
Thank you. Is this on Histon Road? Thank you. Councillor Scott.
I just wanted to apologise to the Arbury councillors that they can't be here due to work commitments. And on this, the Histon Road, Huntingdon Road, Victoria Road intersection, what they wanted to say was this. First, they appreciate that both the configuration and the non-configuration alternatives will be modelled. And secondly, if the configuration model is to be taken into account, then the question is why, if buses and cycles can get round during the peak hours and the configuration enables that to happen, why in non-peak hours can it not be that other vehicles can get round the new configuration, and they want that to be modelled as well as the modelling which they would prefer of the intersection remaining as it is. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you, Councillor. Roger, do you want to say anything from the Assembly on this item?
Yes, please, if I can, Chair. I mean, first of all, can I say that when I was chairing the Assembly, I sprung it upon the public that they only had 1 minute to speak, and so there was a lot of confusion, a lot of notes being scribbled out, but I think it's actually worked quite well today with a number of questions so far. So hopefully we can continue this if we do have this sort of number of questions and people are more prepared. That's what I'd like to say on that. With Histon Road, as you've already stated, this is the first stage for these two schemes of Histon Road and Milton Road, and I pointed out as Chair of the Assembly that there's 2 further consultations planned for these schemes. There was a lot of concern about the amount of time, or the amount of little time that was saved by one of the schemes. 3 minutes on a bus journey has been mentioned. So there's a lot of concern on that, and Mr. Melis did his best to explain why. There was an amendment tabled that asked that preferred options for each of these schemes was brought back to the Assembly and Board, but it was pointed out that this would slow the process, maybe by up to 6 weeks, and it was also thought that there was already sufficient consultation within the schemes for this not to be necessary. This was brought about as an amendment and was actually defeated at the Assembly 6-3. With 1 abstention, but it gives you an idea of what people were thinking at the time. Also at the Assembly, we wanted and got assurance that members of the Assembly and the Board would get sight of any recommendations and proposals going forward as soon as practically possible, so that they weren't sprung upon us a week before the Assembly meeting or you saw them at the same time, but we actually got them as soon as possible, so that we could actually, as members of the Assembly, and I assume as members of the Board you will want to as well, digest the recommendations and proposals that would come forward from the consultation and be able to engage and consult with the public and officers where necessary to find out and answer any questions necessary. Overall, this recommendation for Histon Road was voted on, and there was a 6-4 in favour of the recommendations as they stand from the Assembly.
Okay. Thank you, Councillor Hickman. If at this point I can also just point out that we've got two additional sort of supplementary papers which perhaps could, officers could also mention in the introduction. One of them was linked to the following item, but effectively they both link to both agenda item 10 on Histon Road and the following item on Milton Road. So I think it would be good as part of the introduction to reference those papers both on some issues of detail on the junction, but also on issues relating to landscaping, trees and the role of the local liaison forum. So is it Stuart Walmsley?
It is.
Good. Your turn.
Okay. Just to give you some background, you remember the board agreed to proceed with consultation at its last meeting to undertake a considerable amount of time across the December 2015 to February 2016. So that's the period in which we have consulted on the proposals for this scheme. We've come up with the two options to take forward. I think it's worth, if I could, just to give a bit of a recap on how this fits in overall with the city centre schemes. If you're reminded, Milton Road, Histon Road is one of two schemes that we are looking at. We are also undertaking a detailed study of Madeleine Road, A42 corridor, and the A10 corridor is beginning to emerge as one of our major schemes, and along with the A1307. So these are the main corridor routes that we are currently undertaking a full assessment of, and that does also include the Western Orbital, and again we'll be coming back to the board with proposals on that. So we've got a fairly large programme of works that we are proposing to bring through to the board over the next 6 months. So we've got some very detailed work to undertake in terms of consultation. In terms of Histon and Milton, we were looking to set some objectives on this, and one of the things that we started to do was to undertake what we're trying to achieve here, and that's a comprehensive priority bus in both directions where we practically can. Both Histon and Milton hasn't been fully possible to achieve it in both, but certainly where we can, we are trying to get better bus priority through those routes in both directions. We're also looking to increase the capacity of sustainable trips to the employment and educational sites along those routes. And we're now trying to increase the bus patronage and also to encourage new services along this route. These are measurable outcomes that we will hope to be able to report on as we go forward. We're looking for more safer, more convenient routes for cycling, walking, segregated where practical and possible. And that's another key objective of this scheme. One of the questions that have been coming through today were around how we can get double lane cycling, how we can perhaps provide double lane bus priority. We are working within a very, very tight, constrained environment. And what we don't want to do is to constrain ourselves too much when we go forward with the proposal. So we are looking for some broader options enabling us to integrate all of these measures. And of course, we've got the overall objective of reducing the traffic flows and enhancing the green space available to it. We are working on a process through this, and we are now, as you say, going forward on the recommendation to take us forward on developing the next stage of the scheme through further consultation, more detailed assessment of what we'd like to do. And this is what we're looking for the board to do today, is to give us that permission to set forward on the developing the next stage of consultation, the third option. Just in terms of the consultation itself, key issues that arose, and they have been touched upon here, the concerns and impacts generally related to, and these were centric around the area of Histon and Milton. We didn't attract a great deal of responses from the wider usage, but nevertheless we did pick up a fairly good feel of where the problems were. Victoria Road, Warwick Road, as you know, Gilbert Road, Arbury Road, Union Lane, King Hedges Road, all had proposals for restricted access and use, and each one has been looked at, and some of those have now been withdrawn, as you know. The concerns about cycling, as we know, is there going to be adequate provision for it, but we're looking to do more work in that area to see where we can develop a more detailed approach. And I do hope that working with teams within my area, that we will come up with a fairly balanced approach on what we can and can't achieve there. We are as I said before, looking at modifying the Victoria Road, looking at a range of options, and I've just picked up further requests which I will look at to see whether we can in fact incorporate that as well. And in turn we are looking at Mitcham's Corner, although Mitcham's Corner isn't a scheme directly related to the Histon Milton Road, and the actual benefits of doing bus priority around the Mitcham junction wouldn't make a great deal of difference to the performance of those two routes. But there are benefits in public realm, walking, cycling, and we're working with the City Council in developing how we can improve that. The likelihood is, in terms of the programme, is that Mitcham's Corner will feature later on in the programme as part of and integrated with the City Council in how we can achieve that. So in terms of Histon Road, we're looking to, as I said, go for a do maximum option. We're doing some more work on the Victoria Road junction, as I said. We've got some support and some opposition, as you can imagine, with the parking removal, and we're going to continue to look at that. There is strong support, as we would imagine, for the streetscape enhancement, and that's not just trees, that's also the green space. So I think the message I've been picking up is trees are important, and they rightly are, but don't forget the green space, and that's something that we are clearly trying to look at as well as part of the scheme. Similarly with Milton Road, in terms of the trees on Milton Road, I've got this the wrong way around, but if Histon Road has bus priority in primary direction, we are constrained with the road width there. So we are looking at some good options in achieving what we're trying to do. In terms of the recommendations, what we're looking for from the board is to approve the next stage of consultation. We did recommend and ask for delegation to allow us to proceed forward on that, so that we can move ourselves into the next stage of development and come back to the board with a firm proposal. So that was one of the main objectives that we were looking for. In terms of Histon Road, one of the things we have said is that we're not going to consider any further work on floating buses. That's been excluded because of the widths down that road. Yeah, bus stops, sorry. Bus stop. Because the width of the road itself is... I think I'm ahead of myself there on the future proof of the scheme. 20 years down the line, that may be something we could think about. But in terms of how we can do that, that's again something that in terms of Histon Road we can't achieve, unfortunately. In terms of Milton Road, that is possible, and we are looking to see how improvements can be made. So I think in a way it's a question of us now taking the scheme to the next stage, and for us to work through now the next detailed design over the summer, and to prepare the consultation material to go back out to residents and to come up with some further proposals. And one of the main junctions, of course, that we are looking at is Elizabeth Way. That's attracted a lot of interest. So we will be reviewing what is and what isn't possible at that junction as well. So that in essence, Chair, is proposing today.
Okay, so thank you for that. We sort of strayed into Milton, but we'll just focus on
Histon
Road.
Yeah.
Just for clarity, in addition to the recommendations on pages 55 and 56, I understand there's a couple of extra recommendations. I don't know who could clarify those, please. So if we just take, the first change that the board is proposing is that in addition to excluding the banned Warwick Road turn and the floating bus stops, that we are now proposing to develop two options on Victoria Road Junction, one with the change and one without, right? So the wording, in addition to, just for the benefit of residents and everybody here, for the recommendation 5B on near the bottom of page 55, we're going to add the words to develop two preferred design options, one including and one excluding the changes at the Victoria Road Junction. Yeah. And then there's a further recommendation as well. Yeah, well, if we put it into the hat now, then we can discuss the whole lot together.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'm sure members have received lots of emails in respect of landscaping trees. I would therefore suggest that we instruct officers to ensure that the preferred option, which is for the option of design, goes out for consultation, but detailed proposals on landscape areas and tree planting is set out when that comes forward for consultation.
So
it's a
that would be an extra recommendation G.
Yeah. And then another.
Can you read it out again?
Instruct officers to ensure. Sorry.
Speak up.
Apologies. I will read out. Instruct officers to ensure that the preferred option design for consultation include details of proposed landscape area and tree planting as set out in the report.
Okay. So linking to the section of this, and I think we're going to carry over this recommendation also. We're going to carry over this recommendation also to the Milton Road report as well. Yeah.
Correct.
Okay. So instruct officers to ensure preferred options include landscaping and tree lands as well.
Correct.
Sure. Okay.
Can I perhaps move on to a further recommendation?
Right.
I
So
think
there's
would be
another one.
sensible. Would be note the importance of the local liaison forum. That's involving local councillors and stakeholder groups in the development of detailed layout plans for consultation.
Okay. Councillor Birkin?
In that context, can I ask Bob perhaps to talk to us about the local liaison forum? If I'm right, this is going to be a different one from the one that's been established already for the A428 corridor. Perhaps you could kindly tell us how it works.
Can I just add to that? I've seen reference to the local liaison forum in the report. Given that there are different but similar issues, how can it be constructed so that we can have real focus on Histon and real focus on Milton, rather than trying to do two at the same time? Because in a way, I don't know how it works, but how, other than sorry, I'll start again. Either, isn't it best to have two forums, or to construct it in a way that there's two completely different sets of work?
On that point, I think that we are thinking around having one forum, which is one set of local councillors, but I'm sure we can either construct it as two separate groupings or have a part A and part B to the meetings.
Well, I'll just quickly walk in there and say I think there should be two, because whilst there is a bit of overlap, there is definitely two different communities. Obviously they share some issues, and we don't want to lose the common issues between the two, but I do think two forums, please. Yeah.
I'm happy to be guided by the board on that. In terms of the way local liaison forums actually work, it's a practice we've used for quite some time at the County Council for major projects of setting up local liaison forums, primarily focused around the local elected members, but leaving the operation and functioning of that group to be decided by those local members. They are public meetings, the public are allowed to attend, but as to the actual member who's allowed to speak, we generally leave that to local members to decide.
So primarily for Histon Road it would be Arbury and Castle Ward members, but there may be a case for a bit of input. And for the others it's East Chesterton, West Chesterton and King's Hedges primarily. Yeah.
I don't have a map in front of me. Okay. Shouldn't be right.
At least people generally know the area of the ward they live in. Yeah. Councillor Bates.
Sorry, the reason I was suggesting that we go for two, quite simply, is connected with particularly Victoria Road Junction and Huntingdon Road Junction, which I think will exercise quite a bit of thought both for officers and stakeholders and local members. I'm a regular traveller on the B bus, by the way, that comes down that route, so I'm fully aware of that particular junction, and I think therefore it would be much more appropriate to have two, because I sustain quite a bit of work in respect to the local forum dealing with that particular junction there, and Milton Road would be completely different issues raised by the local members, so I would strongly suggest two groups.
Okay. Right. Okay. In terms of just a couple of questions about the remit. So, subject to what the board agrees, as if you like, that the biggest level of intervention within the sort of decision that is in front of us Can I just check that some of the issues that have been raised, like parking, like obviously the issue of the choices on the Victoria Road junction, and just, yeah, what other issues are the other issue would be the segregated cycle lanes. Can I just check that those issues will be in the remit of the local liaison forum to advise? I think we have to make clear that they're not decision-making bodies, they're advisory bodies. But I just want to check that those sorts of matters will be within the remit of these the local liaison forums, along with the commitment that they would have a look at green landscaping and trees.
Essentially, yes, Chair. And of course, the important point is they are simply a way of engaging the community, involving the community. I would expect some long hours sitting looking in detail at plans as to what exactly goes where, what exactly fits. We found that a very useful process in the past on that, working up the detail, but also helping people understand the pros and cons of the different elements in detail. So quite detailed and lengthy discussions have taken place about aspects of the schemes of local liaison programs in the past. Of course, it may well be that the officers will still be recommending something to the board that is not necessarily in the agreement with local liaison forum, but the views of the local liaison forum will be put forward to the board.
But then we'll have local councillors coming to speak if that's the case.
Indeed. But it will be a transparent process.
Right. Did you want to come in, Councillor Bogan?
Just to say, Chairman, that I'm very happy to support this recommendation with the amendments that have been put through and discussed. I think we've had Histon Road on our work schedule right from the very beginning. It is part of the comprehensive package that was referred to. It's one of the interlinking blocks of our overall work stream. And I think there's been a good public consultation so far, which has resulted in the conceptual ideas of maximum or something being varied. We're now narrowing down to a preferred option, and I think it's absolutely right that that now goes out to public consultation, both through the local liaison forums and eventually the proper public consultation on the 1st of November, because I sense that everybody living in the area, and this comment will apply to Milton Road as well, wants to know the specific detail and talk about specific details, and now is the right time to move on to that stage. So for that reason, I'm very happy to support the recommendations with the amendments.
Any other comments from board members? Can I just add then just that clarity that we do look to have a dialogue through the local liaison forum on some of the details that we're outlining in link to the original plan that was put forward for this option, what it contains, and specifying what it doesn't contain. But I do look to local councillors to contribute in that dialogue. And yes, there will be an officer recommendation, and then there'll be a board decision at the end of it. Right there. Yeah? Good. So in terms of the recommendations in front of us, they are as was on the paper, except that we've added words 5B in relation to 2 options for the Victoria Road junction. We've added 2 further recommendations, a G in relation to ensuring that there's an explicit landscaping and trees plan for Histon Road, which will evolve in part in discussion through that forum as well, and that we note that we'll create a Histon Road local liaison forum, including local members to look at the detailed designs, including the aspects that I also mentioned in the discussion. So as a package of recommendations, can I see all those in favour? Okay, thank you. So we now move...
Chairman, a big signal from the back. I don't know if you'd allow us very quickly to move to agenda item 13 on page 111. Councillor Van de Ven, I think, would just like to say a couple of words, but she's signalling that she's then got to leave.
Okay. So this is to benefit people who travel further to these meetings. So if we could take item 13 in the expectation that it's probably non-controversial, but there may be some additional points to be made. There was also a public question about this, in that there was a questioner asking about part of the Melbourne link. Is the public questioner here about Melbourne link? Okay, well, we'll include that as well. Councillor Van der Ven?
Thank you very much, and sorry to intervene like this. I just wanted to welcome this report and to thank the Assembly for its support. It's a key link. This is the Shepherd to Melbourne A10 cycle link. This is a key link to business, especially Melbourne Science Park. And this brings us a big step closer to the aspiration for an overall Cambridge to Royston link. I just wanted to say that keeping this very brief, that the A10 cycling campaign is working very closely with local business to encourage a change in travel choices to sustainable transport. And as a result of the report today, the Melbourne Science Park will be looking to create a new segregated cyclist entrance to the park, and a major change in the way that its employees are encouraged to travel to work. And the other interesting thing is that the chairman of the site has said this will enable the workforce to be increased. They will be able to provide more jobs due to this cycle link. So that's really welcome news. And the other news that's just come in, and I'm sorry I haven't shared it with you previously, but we are working on an idea for corporate sponsored maintenance of this new infrastructure. We know that the county highways budget is terribly pressured. We can only afford 2 verge cuts a year, which isn't satisfactory. So AstraZeneca, which is currently a tenant at Melbourne Science Park, has agreed with the A10 Corridor Cycling Campaign to run a 2-year sponsored maintenance for the new link, not just at Melbourne Science Park, but the whole route. And we have a lot of work to do, but we're really pleased that it's not just us with our spades and rakes, but we can get more serious about this. And finally, I wanted to thank the LEP for preparing a bid to fund the final link toward Royston. This is so important. And the cycling campaign is now working closely with Royston businesses, starting with Johnson Matthey, to get our postcode data together for the workforce so we understand the crossing of the Hertfordshire border where that bridge will make such a difference. So thank you very much.
Thank you, and I should also pay tribute to your perseverance and pioneering of this route, because stage by stage you'll get there. Thank you. Councillor Pepper, well, I think that we're commenting on the question. We've got another question. So, if we could ask the other questioner to come. Thank you for coming in from South Cambridgeshire.
The route that's been improved so far from Cambridge to Melbourne is fantastic. For all the people that work in that village, really appreciate it. New proposed route is a great improvement as well. My question is that all the improvements so far are on the west side of the A10, and then the route is going to go onto the east side to go down to Melbourne. So there's one point on the whole journey where you're going to cross the A10, and there currently isn't any traffic over there, which is next to the Weaver's Shed, area near the Cambridge Motel on the A10. Now I understand that there is a proposal for traffic island there, but it can't be put in until the street lighting is there as well. Can I just be clear that this section will include making sure that is completed as well?
That's a good question. Have we thank you, Mr. Bedford. Have we got a response on Mr. Bedford's questions?
Yes, we have, and we are considering this as part of that scheme. So it is a yes.
So we're saying that it's an integral part of implementing that scheme.
Okay. There's details about the right to supply to it, but yes.
The electric for the lights and everything. Okay, is that okay, Mr. Bedford? Okay. Thank you for coming in. If we could...
Sorry. I was going to pass a comment on from Councillor Tony Orgy, the County Council, who supports this particular scheme, and I think, like I suspect other local members want to see it extended a little further, i.e. to Royston. Can I please, I have had some conversations with my opposite number in Hertfordshire, particularly to get it right onto the border, and I think it would be useful if officers contact Hertfordshire County Council officers in relationship to taking this project all the way to Washington, because it will involve, I suspect, possibly a bridge. Councillor Orgy wishes to place on record that he is content and would wish to see
supporting this scheme.
Thank you.
Roger, did you want to add anything from the discussion at the Assembly on this item?
Thank you, Chair. There was unanimous support from the Assembly for the A10 cycling scheme, and also support was expressed for the letting any bid that they do for their bridge building. Thank you.
Okay, any comments from officers on this item?
I don't think so, Chair.
I mean, as I said before, I think it's a tribute to the efforts that Susan van der Ven and other people, including other councillors along the road, have put at its building. I mean, it's, for the sake of the public record, we support schemes, and I know the person sitting next to me is looking to secure funding to improve particularly the links across into South Cambridgeshire, and to do a much more clear support of cycling in South Cambridgeshire than there's been the sort of board unanimity on until now. So we will be looking further at cycling there. The issue for us, in part on this, I mean, it's a selfish issue, but it has to be stated in public, is if other people will fund things, then we will give them the opportunity first. So we will contribute to the funding, we will continue to contribute to cycling schemes outside of the city, but we will also be looking, subject to other people, Hertfordshire County Council, other routes as well. We've got a fairly unanimous position on item 13. Councillor? You agree? Okay. So, right, so the vote's in favour of the recommendations on item 13. Right. Sorry to the people from Milton Road, where there was hopefully a brief diversion. So if we come back to item 11, we've got some public questioners. First, we've got Sheila Butcher as number 9 and Peter Fenton who's number 30. So if whoever's going to ask on Sheila's behalf, or Sheila.
I was wondering if I could add one response to Mr. Chapman.
I don't think so, I'm afraid, Lynn. Sorry.
Something wasn't answered last week.
Sorry. Sheila Butcher. Thank you.
Yeah, I've lived on Milton Road for 50 years. And the thing that worries me is that it's going to be just destroyed. Can I be assured that every other option is investigated before the digging starts on Milton Road, please? So, will every other option, congestion, everything be, charged for congestion? Will that all be taken into consideration before the actual road works?
Well, I mean, if Bob Mingus answers to start, and I'll add my view.
I think that's a very similar point to what was being made earlier by Mr. Nisbet about, and the response that I made to that was that essentially we won't get to a point of a decision to actually implement anything, to actually do any digging, until after we have already introduced, assuming things go according to plan, the peak hour congestion charge, so we'll be able to take a view there of how effective that is being before any decision is taken to actually start digging. So I think in that respect, I would say yes.
Points, yeah?
Sorry, what did I say?
Yeah, well, something different.
It's been a long week. Peak congestion charging points, that's what I meant to say, until we can, so we won't be taking an actual decision to actually implement anything until we actually have got that in place, essentially on the current programme.
I mean, I think we believe that, having looked at the road as a board, that we should implement further work on it, both for cyclists and for the junctions and measures on the buses. Now, it will be still subject to the discussion in the local liaison forum, so there's still further discussions. What you see in front of you isn't the final scheme. We've only recently adopted a proposal to go for public discussion about tackling the city centre congestion. And what we'll also be doing is combining the modelling, so that we will model how many cars do we think will be reduced by the measures in the city centre, with what's the projected cars, buses, cycles along Milton Road. So
really busy trip along the road.
Well, we'd like to encourage that.
Moment.
Yeah.
But,
So thank you for your question. We'll follow it up in the discussion about Milton Road as well. So thank you, Mr. Butcher. Well, you can always ask questions by ringing us up as well. Okay. Question 30 from Peter Fenton, please.
There's been much talk in the press and here today recently about various citywide measures to reduce the flow of traffic into and out of Cambridge. In the light of these measures and the imminent North Cambridge Railway Station, does the board think that the proposals for Milton Road have become obsolete even before they've started? All of the traffic flow projections in the consultation report are already out of date, leaving the board with no basis on which to make a decision but guesswork. Would it not be better to shelve this project and wait to see how well these other measures work, rather than face the foreseeable future being barraged by the righteous ire of unhappy residents?
Thank you, Mr. Fenton, and also to Mr. Butcher. If we can answer those two, and then we'll come on to some questions about Elizabeth Way and the current roundabout.
Again, Chairman, a very similar point. It is correct that up until now, because we've been bringing these schemes forward in parallel with multiple options for all of them, we've not modelled them all as a whole together, and we now need to do that, and we will do that before the public consultation. That may lead to changes in some of the details and some of the aspects of the scheme. As we do that modelling, we will make that public, and everyone will have that information as to how the schemes work together. The cumulative effect.
So we will model it, Mr. Fenton, and if you want to get the full detail on that, including linking up what our measures for the city centre, measures for Milton Road, but also the impacts of the Cambridge North Station, which has been taken into account in the work that's been done, then you can have a look and then see whether you accept the figures. We've got three questions, 14, 18 and 22 from Glyn Burton, Duncan Astle and John Latham about Elizabeth Way. So if we could first ask for Glyn's question. Thank you.
This is very much a micro question compared to some of the fundamental macro questions that have been asked before, but it's important to a significant number of us. And it's about the new proposal that's suddenly been sprung upon us, that there is going to be no right turn from Milton Road into Elizabeth Way. Is that right? That's the proposal in your new document? People moving out of town up Milton Road will no longer be able to turn right into Elizabeth Way. I know it is, but that's in the document. That's a proposal. For the life of me, I can't see how this is going to help the bus flows, the speed of bus flows, because presumably they'll have priority traffic lighting anyway on the new traffic system, the sound roundabout. And also, it has an effect on the Hurst Park Avenue estate, Mulberry Close, Asham Road, people who used to be able to turn left fairly straightforwardly and then right at the roundabout to access Newmarket Road, Chesterton, and so on, will now have to turn right out of Hurst Park Avenue, across 3 lines of traffic, down Milton Road, round Mitcham's Corner, all the way along Chesterton Road, and they'll rejoin the roundabout at Chesterton Road, thereby slowing the cars down that have turned left anyway, as we join before they do. So I just don't see the point of it. And I was hoping that I could get an assurance that there'll be a proper discussion about this issue, about which we feel quite strongly. There is the other option, of course, that we could do the rat run via Lees Road and spill out of that rather dangerous junction, if you don't know of it, onto Arbury Road, hence holding up the traffic there. So it just seems a crazy proposal, and I can't see the reason for it.
We'll get you an answer.
Please do.
Bob, Stuart?
I think it's something we've identified as the work has gone on. It may have some merit. We're not putting it forward as a firm proposal. On behalf of the people actually listen. Some merit that's worth looking at further. It's not in here as a firm proposal, but we've just said in the report we think it's worth exploring further. So I'm happy to give Mr. Fenton, Mr. Burton, the assurance that actually we will be exploring that further, we will be sharing that information, and we're not actually making any decisions now, we're just saying we think there is some merit in looking at it.
Could you just hint on what the some merit might be?
Well, in any junction, the fundamentals of any junction are that only one thing can occupy one given bit of space at one given time, and that's usually junction design, therefore usually involves around where the right turners are in conflict with each other against the head traffic. If you can take right turning traffic out of a junction, you can give a lot more time to other traffic, and in terms of getting bus priority to work and actually minimising the need for as much bus lane, we think there is some merit in doing that. As I say, we're not proposing it as a firm proposal at this stage. We're happy to what we're suggesting to do more. We don't do more work on the pros and cons of that. But if in taking out a right turn movement, we can have less bus lane, then there are advantages to it. We clearly need to look at what traffic's affected by that, where the traffic goes. Well, as I say, we think it's worth exploring further, hence it's referred to in the report. It's not in there as a firm proposal at this stage, though.
So, to underline it from the board, there is no decision on this. It's not part of the scheme, but there may be some discussions about it, and we'll make sure that you're kept in touch with that, and obviously the Residents' Association.
Thank you very much.
Councillor Bates.
Bearing in mind that the three questions are all grouped together, I think it would be useful for the members of the board here. The others.
Yeah, I just felt that was a particular question.
I appreciate that.
So we'll take the next two together. Duncan Astle. So question 18 for you, so you've got your page.
As 90% of morning traffic turns left at the roundabout down Elizabeth Way, and then queues both at the Chesterton Road roundabout and the Newmarket Road roundabout, why are these not being considered as part of the overall scheme of improvements?
Okay. Thank you. We'll answer it at the same time as the next question from John Latham. So question 22, again about Highwood Avenue, Elizabeth Way.
I'm not John Latham. He had to step out a few minutes ago, and so I'm asking on his behalf. He says, the consultation revealed a majority in favour of retaining the Milton Road Highwood Avenue roundabout. Residents' associations and others have made detailed suggestions about retaining the roundabout whilst improving its configuration, including new lane markings, peripheral cycleway and peak hour traffic signal control. He can find no evidence that these ideas were actually investigated. Indeed, they don't seem to be given any weight in the report. And he cannot find any evidence that there was a request to consultants to come up with a design drawing on other countries' experience that could be put forward as an option for consultation. He says this because 52% of the respondents were either objecting or strongly objecting to the roundabout's removal. He asks, why is this, and why is there no discussion in the report?
Okay, thank you. So, do two ward councillors want to speak now, or Councillor Price and Councillor Sargent want to speak? Okay.
Thank you, Chair.
So you're a councillor for King's Hedges as as well as other things?
As well as other things, I am councillor for King's Hedges Ward, of which Milton Road forms a part. I just wanted to draw attention, Chair, and I'm sure you've seen it, and I'm hoping that all other board members have read that the 13 Labour councillors that represent the wards that are affected by Milton Road and indeed Histon Road sent to you earlier this week, where we sought to build on the submissions that we made to the consultation. We made a few recommendations in this letter. We recommended that mature tree planting and green landscaping will be implemented and integrated with the works alongside the carriageway, reflecting and improving the existing public amenity, in particular along the northern section of the route, which was for specifically for Histon Road, and that we recommended mature tree planting and green landscaping will be implemented and integrated alongside the carriageway along the full length of the road, reflecting and improving the existing public amenity for Milton Road. You know, as ward councillors, we get a lot. My inbox is currently full of emails from concerned residents of all these wards, but in particular from my ward. So I also submitted a couple of amendments at the Assembly meeting last week, which were all done somewhat in a bit of a hurry due to the lack of time that we had, and I withdrew one of them because I was assured that the board would be taking cognizance of what we'd said within that, so we didn't need to. But I didn't withdraw the one for Milton Road because I felt that was slightly better worked up. So I'm hoping that the board are aware of that. I did want to touch on one thing, and it may be that it's beyond, but I do want to mention on behalf of the people of East Chesterton, and certainly that has been raised with me by the councillors in East Chesterton, the issue of the closure of Union Lane, and that Union Lane forms just one of three areas that the people of East Chesterton have to exit East Chesterton. East Chesterton is unique in the city in that it is bordered by the river, by the railway, and of course by the A14 at the other end. So they only have, if we take away Union Lane, 2 ways in and 2 ways out. So we would be very grateful if the board would take that into consideration as well when they come to their deliberations. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Councillor Price. Councillor Sargent from Westchester also wanted a short contribution.
Right, half an hour. Thank you, Chair. I'm pleased to see that there is a recommendation to include more on green verges and green landscaping and trees. I want to just raise a few specifics which I think are of concern to local residents. One of them is the short stretch from Hurst Park Avenue to the Elizabeth Way Junction, which in Do Something has 2 bus lanes, and it does not seem appropriate that there would be 2 bus lanes in that narrow stretch, while the rest of the road, from what I understand with Do Something, only has 1 bus lane. So I would like clarification on that. I also want to stress the importance of cycle lanes, 2-way cycle lanes between Arbury Road and Gilbert Road. Very heavily used by local residents, particularly children on their way to school. And if we just go for single cycle lane in each direction, then I think there will actually be a reduction in the amount of cycling by children. And obviously we want children to be encouraged to start cycling at an early age. And if you expect children to cross Milton Road twice to get from, say, Hurst Park Avenue Estate to the Milton Road School, I think you've got no chance. So they'll either cycle illegally contraflow on a single way cycle lane, or they will stop cycling. And the other point I want to make is I'm very concerned that we are spending a lot of money on cycling, but when we get down to Mitcham's Corner, there'll be no improvement in cycling on Mitcham's Corner. So people may be encouraged by the new cycleways on Milton Road to cycle down, but the first time they get to Mitcham's Corner and realise how difficult and unsafe it is, they probably won't do it again. So I think in tranche 1 we have got to look to improvements on Mitcham's Corner, particularly for cycling and pedestrians. Otherwise the objective of improving cycling on the length of Milton Road will fail in that area.
I just want to get answers to the two questions there from Duncan Astill and John Layton. You can field them, Stuart? Thanks. But we'll pick up the points from councillors in the discussion on Milton Road.
Thank you, Chair. I think I said before that this is a particularly complex junction, one that we've really got to look at. We're going to undertake some further modelling work of it. The proposals are for signalisation, as we said, and we just need to think about what the mitigation of that would mean when it comes to displacement around the network. So I think we've got a bit more work to do that, and as I said before, as we take the next stage of design, these are the points that we now need to make some thorough understandings of. In terms of the alternative, John Nathan, it's the alternative measures have been considered, but as I said before, this junction does actually mean it's quite an important junction for the bus priority measures to work along this section of road. And we do have to consider the safety of cyclists as well through that junction. So we're not saying no to fundamental change, but actually we do feel that we are going to have to move forward on something quite different there to ensure that we retain some safety through it. If we don't, we will get tested further down the line as to see whether in fact we haven't made the situation better or worse. So we do have to be very mindful of what we do at that junction. We are aware of the concerns, and it did get picked up in the consultation in some depth, and we are aware of those problems.
So just to both the councillors and Councillor Mike Sargent, but also the questioners are asking effectively what's the opportunity for public input? How far will the local liaison forum give an opportunity to look at the detail of what's proposed at Highworth Avenue and Elizabeth Way?
There will be that opportunity to do that through the local liaison forum. The important consideration here is that this junction is important in terms of the success of that scheme. So we will be constrained in many respects on what we can do, but we are clearly willing to listen and to engage those in that particular area of concerns to ensure that we mitigate it as much as we possibly can. So yes, there will be that opportunity to contribute towards it.
I've got 8 more public questions on this, so I'm going to take you after the next couple of questioners, Councillor. Well, if you want to speak now, that's fine, but I'll just... Okay, that's fine, but I'm just keen, obviously, to get through... There's 8 public questioners that we want to get answers to as well. Councillor Scott, speak now.
Yes, I certainly don't want to take up the time of residents speaking. However, I must raise this point. It has been said that the local liaison forum will have a say in relation to the matters that are being discussed in this section. I refer the board to the item reports addendum note, which is dated originally, the cover note is the 8th of June, and it's here on the 9th of June, and it is headed Histon Road and Milton Road bus priority walking and cycling measures, reports on initial consultation and selection of preferred options. I refer to paragraph 4, which says, if the Executive Board approves the report recommendations for preferred options as the basis for further detailed design work, this will fix the carriageway layout. Now, if the carriageway layout is fixed, as is stated in paragraph 4 of reports addendum note dated the 9th of June 2016, headed Histon Road and Milton Road bus priority, walking and cycling measures, reports on initial consultation and selection of preferred options. What that means is the 4-lane highway will be fixed between Oak Tree Avenue and Hurst Park Avenue. And the residents absolutely object to that. They want their views to be taken into account, and therefore, because a 4-lane highway, as my colleague Councillor Sargent has pointed out, will create numerous difficulties there, and I would like to refer to pedestrians crossing a 4-lane highway where vehicles are coming along at different speeds, there are shops, and that will be an impossible situation for them. So again, I go back to paragraph 4, and I do put to the board in the strongest terms that the words appearing there, "This will fix the carriageway layout, however," should be omitted, so that what this paragraph reads is, if the Executive Board approves the report recommendations for preferred options as the basis of further detailed design work, a key consideration in developing the preferred option layouts will be how the other elements, etc., are put together to form the highway cross sections. So I put that as a proposed amendment, which I would hope that the board would accept. Thank you.
Certainly, I do not subscribe to the word fix, because clearly, and with the example that you've cited, Councillor Scott, of the one section, of the short section, where it's diverging from there being at one bus lane but proposing 2, that there have been considerable representations, and that was an issue that I specifically raised as one of the issues I raised with the officers that the local liaison forum should look at. So irrespective of your question, I've already raised that as something I would seek the local liaison forum to look at. But what I wouldn't want to residents or others to believe from us deleting that phrase is the fact that we are agreeing a basic layout as part of the decision that we're about to make. So it isn't about everything is up for grabs. It is about looking at specifics. So specifics like that, as we've discussed, the design of Elizabeth Way, Highworth Avenue, proposals will be put, they will be discussed. Issues of the green landscaping, issues of the separate cycleways, a number of issues of design, which completely then impact on the green landscaping and the trees, will be put to the local liaison forum. So personally, I'm happy to delete that. I don't know about other members of the board, that phrase, but I wouldn't want people to go away with the impression that we aren't agreeing a basic proposal today.
Mr. Chairman, I'm content to take those words out. I'm also content for the local forum to actually discuss this in considerable detail at the appropriate time. So I'm content for these words to be taken out. And as a matter of interest, I have received and have read the submission which was referred to by the 3 councillors.
So I think, Councillor Scott, you made a very good point. And so there is flexibility, but there is a proposed scheme, if you follow what we're going at. So when we come to agree it, we are actually agreeing this as a recommended do something scheme, if that is what we decide. But I've got several more questions before then. So I've got questioners 23 and 28, John Beasley on traffic lane widths, and John Cornish on pavement and cycleway widths. Or their substitutes. I don't know who some of these people are that haven't. I mean, obviously people are entitled to substitute and ask, but do these people exist? They exist. Good, very good.
As John Beasley. The Department of Transport Manual, TD 2705, stipulates a lane width of 3.65 metres for outer arterial roads such as Milton Road. A 4-lane section from Oak Tree Avenue to Hurst Park Avenue is proposed by restricting lane width to 3 metres. This is not geometrically feasible because the width of modern buses and lorries will fill the lanes and endanger oncoming traffic, causing vehicles to veer into cycle lanes with concomitant danger to cyclists and pedestrians. The proposed 3-metre lanes will be unsafe and contravene regulations. The 4-lane configuration along Milton Road will be unsafe, risking the lives of cyclists and pedestrians. Question: for safety reasons, please, either will the City Deal consider revising lane width to 3.65 and changing to 3 lanes, not 4, and or restricting the width of vehicles allowed to travel along the road. Thank you.
Hilary Boyd, thank you, Hilary. And John Cornish on pavement and cycle width.
I can assure you that the other people do exist, and they're earning the money to pay for the scheme.
Yeah. Thank you.
So this question is sort of linked with the other question, and it's really about fitting in everything along that stretch that we're talking about now, where the roundabout is. I think there was a letter sent by Milton Road School, and it referred to four schools in that area. The children are walking, scootering and cycling. So the question refers to the pavement on the northwest side of Milton Road between Mitcham's Corner and Arbury Road is generally over 4 metres wide and mixed use. It is very heavily used in both directions by families and children accessing the schools in the area and the local communities. Can we be reassured that there is a commitment by the project team to keeping the pavement off-road cycleway as a minimum 4 metres wide for the stretch from Mitcham's Corner through to Arbury Road, when you consider the previous question about whether there's enough room for traffic and so on? Thank you.
Thank you. So Stuart, you can answer those 2 questions about that section of the road.
Yeah, I mean, in terms of the width, that question arose at the Assembly, and as we said there, look, yes, in an ideal world that would be great. Unfortunately, we've got roads that we've inherited over many years. We're lucky to get 6 metres in many roads, so we have to manage those in the best way we can. So the reference to design standards do relate to tramp roads. Yeah, so clearly where you've got high-speed traffic, those are important considerations. But we're talking about local roads here, and we have to deal with the network that we have available to us, and hence the measures we do have to fit in with the existing constraints of that. In terms of the question from John Cornish who's spoken to, is that this will feature as part of the next stage, really, when we go towards local liaison forum. There's a number of issues that are coming forward which all have a common theme, and I think in some respects these are the sorts of things that we will take forward and consider fully when we get to the point of more engagement. I just think that's good.
So again, it's an issue that will be looked at with residents through particularly council representatives as well as technically. Thank you. I mean, another issue which is raised is we don't actually know what's underneath a lot of these pavements anyway, so until we do some survey work, we won't actually be clear what some of the options are. Right, we've got 6 questions, so I propose taking them in 2 groups of 3. 12, 13 and 15 from Jane Wheatley, Maureen Mace and Hugh Lee Paul, please. If they're here, or so are you Jane? Good. Okay, so a question about the shops. The shops on Arbury Road.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'm concerned about access for the shops on Milton Road coming up to the Arbury Road junction. These shops currently enjoy 2 lay-bys outside the shops, a small amount of parking, and 2 lay-bys on the opposite side of the road. The latest diagram, as set out in the interim report layout for Milton Road, shows bus lanes on both sides of Milton Road at this point and no street parking, thus severely limiting access to these shops. The government is providing the money under the City Deal to help Cambridge become even more of a powerhouse. Surely small businesses play an important part of this. Indeed, City Deal tells us it is committed to support and improve commerce in Cambridge. Maybe these shops aren't quite big enough for you guys, but the proposed bus lanes will cut down passing trade, of which there is a lot, with 2 takeaway outlets, Viking Fish and Chips and the Milton House Chinese. They don't just support the local residents, by the way, they support people commuting back to South Cambs and East Cambs, picking up their takeaways on the way home. It would divide the community on Milton Road and may mean that some small businesses cannot continue to trade. In addition, these shops are vital to the local community, an example being the cooperative store that serves a great many local people, as well as those passing through, and preventing access would mean travelling further to get staple foods, adding to and not reducing road traffic. My question is, what measures will the City Deal put in place to ensure the safety of our small businesses and protect the community and the passing trade that they serve? Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
The next question we want to take is from Maureen Mace. She's here? She's not here. Okay.
I could read it for you.
Well, I think we can answer it, if that's okay. We'll answer the question.
Yes. Do you want to read it? No, just read it on the notes.
Yeah.
Sorry, which number?
Is it possible just to focus on the question, because we'll be ready to answer it?
Just read the question.
Yeah.
That's what I meant, yes. Anne Garpin reading in place of Maureen Mace. Question to the Greater Cambridge Executive Board on 9th June 2016. Public consultation means informing people, receiving comments and responding to them. With regard to Milton Road, there are significant differences between the diagram for Do Something, which was sent out with the questionnaire, and the updated version and the interim report submitted to the meeting of the Greater Cambridge City Deal Joint Assembly on the 2nd of June. This includes the additional bus lanes from Hurstpack Avenue to Arbury Road, areas for potential parking instead of trees, and removing all trees from the whole length of the eastern side of the road. It cannot be assumed that the public will know what the new proposal is bearing in mind. A. Not everyone has access to a computer or finds it easy to view or download large amounts of data. B. Those answering the questionnaire will not necessarily even know it has been updated. Maureen's question is, have hard copies of the interim report, including the updated diagram for Milton Road, been lodged in the Central Library and the Milton Road Library? And I'd add Arbury Court Library as well. And will the updated version be sent to those who responded to the questionnaire, which includes people from outside the city, and will they be given an opportunity to comment? Maureen Mace, thank you.
Thank you. The third question is from you, Lee Paul. Hi. Within the time, I'm not sure you've got the time to read it all, so if you could just take part of it, particularly the question at the end.
I have a short one.
Good.
Milton Road is a tree-lined avenue which is of huge importance, not just to local residents but to visitors and to the nature and heritage of Cambridge. As such a city, we should be looking to improve upon and not take away from the greenery we have. There is not enough space left on Milton Road after the expansion of the proposed bus lanes to fit in other solutions that Milton Road actually needs and wants. You're condemning Milton Road and the residents to an unwanted and unfair new street plan. The City Deal's Urban Design Guide states that the choice and use of materials and trees must not be considered as an add-on or a last-minute thought. We are not prepared to settle for having trees and verges where possible as an afterthought. Can we please have a commitment now to maintain at least 1 meter's width of trees and verges along both sides of Milton Road? Also, the trees which are removed will be replaced with mature flowering trees.
Okay, thank you. I think we'll come back to Stuart. Thanks, Stuart.
Mr. Chair. We are aware of the economic viability of businesses in that area and dependency that they place on passing trade, but I don't think we can underestimate also the effect of pedestrians and cyclists passing trade as well. And I think we do overestimate at times just the impact of cars, so that we shouldn't be misled by the fact that that isn't the only reason why those shops thrive in the way they do. There will be proposals put forward which will include removal of some of those lay-bys. We have to accept that to get these possible priority measures in. But what we will do is that we will draw up designs now which will indicate clearly where these are and what mitigation we can provide of street, frontage shopping, whatever, to ensure that we don't have a net loss. We can't guarantee it, but we do need to make sure that we have to face the reality that in that particular section we will need to make some rapid changes to some of those ways.
But you are looking for you're looking to see if you can avoid there being a net loss.
Yes, absolutely.
Okay.
Going on to the next question Maureen raised. Well, the plans referred to aren't the plans that we're actually taking forward. So we did say in the report that we are developing now further proposals, and this is going to pick up quite a lot of what we've discussed today. We will clearly take in provisions, as we said time and time again, cycling, the trees, the landscaping, everything else that goes with that will be considered now as we take forward the design, and the local liaison forums will help us do that. And in terms of the last question...
Well, the reports question were in terms of, so will they be lodged then?
Sorry. Just to make it absolutely clear, we put on the internet the WSP report, and it was called the Initial Options Study. It does have within it some plans which show quite detailed proposals for cycle lanes, etc. That's not actually what we're seeking approval for today. I think that's an important point to make. What we're seeking approval for today is what's set out in Appendix 5 in terms of bus lane lengths, and the rest of it essentially is up for discussion. We already had a discussion about even whether we stick with Appendix 5 earlier. So I think there's a bit of a misunderstanding there that these are the plans. They are not the plans. The plans are going to be developed.
Richard Preston agreed the full detailed plan, which was the background information for the questionnaire, which showed the do something schemes in Milton Road for those people who can't access the computer. And so my question really, the question has just been asked, surely the amended design, the interim report, at least those diagrams, could be put somewhere where people could look at.
Well, I think we can put the reports that we've got today, but they need to be with a caveat to say that this isn't going to be the plan. It's the discussion. It's the basis for the plan, but there's still the further discussions. So I think we can get our communications people to lodge the reports in both of the libraries so that they're in an accessible place and put them in the central library. Okay.
Thank you very much.
And then obviously, if there's a further significant version, then the local liaison forum, I hope, would see that gets updated. Right, three further questions. 21 from Michael Page. Sorry.
And again, this question, this is about the version. This was a question that was raised again at the Assembly. This insistence, and again, we talk about constraining ourselves too much when we go forward with the design. A metre width verge for tree planting may not be the best solution. We're looking for better ideas than that. It does restrict the future maintenance of it, the future ideas. So, yes, in parts it may be, but we don't want to limit our options to synchronise.
Which was a little bit more.
But it is recognised that in terms of particularly some of the green landscaping, it doesn't work on areas less than that. It's just that how do we design those into the design. I think in addition to the further recommendation that the board's proposing about having a green landscaping and trees plan, we do want to have there being a particular plan, and it won't just be an afterthought. I live on Hills Road and to some extent the green landscaping there is a complete afterthought in terms of the scheme that's been there. So I know what can be done wrong, but it's not possible at this stage to say what exactly the landscaping and the tree provision would be. Do you want to add to that, Mr. Bean?
I would like to say that also it's not been an afterthought, it's perhaps a compromise too far. It worked very well, it wasn't an afterthought. I think the other important point I want to make...
I stand corrected, but it's not what we're looking for on Milton Road.
I think there's lessons to be learned there. The other point I wanted to make is we've had a number of different people requesting different things. So a 4 metre wide dual use cycle path, fully segregated cycle paths, and a guarantee of a metre wide strip the entire length. And all those things are all laudable, and we'd all like to be able to do it, but there isn't room to do all of it everywhere. So what we'll end up with is have some difficult decisions about where we compromise on these things.
But it will not be an afterthought, but obviously it has to be integrated with the other ambitions of improving segregated cycleways and other measures.
And if I may respond to that last comment, clearly we've moved from the do maximum option to do something optional on the bus lanes, which is really a compromise on the optimum bus lane scenario.
Right, thank you, and thank you for that question. It did hit an important point. 21 from Michael Page and the Hurst Park Residents Association, 24 from Richard Taylor, and 26, if I pronounce it right, from Miriam Kabicha.
Before you start timing, Mr. Chairman, my fox has been somewhat shocked by Councillor Scott, who's asked a brilliant question earlier. I think it's been answered with regard to the fixation of the... So if you don't mind, I'd like to have the same preamble but ask a slightly different question.
It's a short question.
Oh, it's very short, I do assure you. So I'll read the preamble quickly. At the Joint Assembly meeting last Thursday, the Vice Chair tabled an amendment which, if it had been passed, would have allowed a brief respite for some further work to be carried out on some of the key features of the Milton Road plans. I'm very worried that these items, which involve public safety, access and the green environment, are going to get baked in if the officer's recommendations are accepted in full today by the board. The process between the initial consultation and today's decision making is so curtailed that I fear it will be brought further into disrepute in the eyes of the public. It is in everyone's interest to try and ensure that the final road configuration is as good as it can be. So here's where my question slightly differently comes. To assist that process, will there be a formal review of success or otherwise of the Hills Road and Huntingdon Road schemes before finalising the design of any new schemes?
Well, that's a late goodly. They're very different roads, and there's certainly no proposal to produce something, as with the dropping on Histon Road of the floating bus stops, not floating buses, and as with the reference to green landscaping and trees, there's no intention of doing something similar. Not that they don't have merit. I mean, there is merit in Hills Road and Huntingdon Road. It's just that the landscaping is what did you say?
Perhaps a compromise too far, was like I said before. In terms of the answer to that question, we did undertake as part of the floating bus stops implementation on Hills Road and Huntingdon Road to do a review, an independent review. That has actually been done, and I'm hoping we'll be able to publish that shortly.
Okay, so the review of the two roads will be published. Okay. I've got two more and I'll take them together. Richard Taylor.
I'm Richard Taylor. I live in a house owner on Milton Road, and I previously worked with board member Nigel Slater. Now, the substantive output from this afternoon's meeting will be the text that's approved by the board. It's not the reports, it's not the promises and statements we've heard from officers. Now, the officer recommendation that's currently drafted, I think, is unclear. We just heard that it's not clear which version of the Do Something report is being referred to. There are a number of them. One was consulted on, one was dated May 2016 and has recently been published. So I think the board needs to be clear which elements and which version of the Do Something report it is supporting. Officers have been clear, particularly in the document they published last night, that what they're recommending is supporting the principles of the location of the motor traffic lanes on Milton Road and leaving the other elements to be discussed later. So if that's what the officers are really suggesting, then that's what the recommendations should say. And it really isn't the report that's important. I think when, in response to Councillor Shutt, you were saying we can remove the element which says fix the carriageway layout, but that's in the report. That was never in the recommendation in the first place. So it's a recommendation that you need to have clear at the end of this.
Thank you. Anything to add on that? I mean, I think we will be clear when we come to the recommendation what we're proposing.
I hope it is clear. The reason originally the addendum was to clarify that point. Essentially, it is what is set out in paragraphs 27 and 28 in Appendix 5. That is what we're asking to support.
Last but not least on this, Miriam Kabicha.
I am Miriam. I suppose this question is partly related to these new introductions. For example, the no right turn into Elizabeth Way and so on. So my question to the board is, it is stated that as part of the next phase, consideration will be given to the option of keeping a fourth arm open for Highworth Avenue on the signalised junction. That's potentially replacing Elizabeth Way roundabout. Highworth Avenue is a no-through road for vehicle traffic. Can we be reassured that it will remain as such?
Thank you.
Yes. There are no proposals to open.
Yeah. So that's a clear answer.
What does that mean to here?
So it will be a no-through road in one form or other.
Yeah, that's right.
Okay. Right. So we revert to the core of the item and take into account a considerable number of very important points made there. Do you want to add anything, Roger?
Chair, if I may just add some, I mean, it was at this point I was bringing up the local liaison forums, which obviously has been covered quite comprehensively, and obviously they need to operate successfully and integrate the stakeholders as they should do. This is obviously a very there's a lot of public and resident concern over this scheme and very contentious. But I will reiterate again, this is the start of the process as far as the Assembly was concerned. 2 further consultations, and it is vital what we asked and got agreed that any proposals and recommendations, as soon as we know them, are actually given to members of the Board and Assembly so that we can work on them, so that they don't come as a complete surprise. And that was part of the problem with Councillor Price, who you heard earlier, who did do 2 amendments for Histon Road and Milton Road, but because the Assembly was basically hijacked with them with no notice of them, and officers the same with no notice. I don't think the amendment, he withdrew the amendment to Histon Road as you heard, but the amendment to Milton Road was voted on, and it actually lost 4-3, very close. And I don't think it lost because it was unworthy, I just think it was sprung upon us and we had no time, and the officers had no time to actually comment on the ideas in it.
Well, we hadn't sprung as
So, therefore, what did come out of that is that any amendments from any members or etc., please work them up as soon as possible, give them to officers, and officers are always ready and willing to look at ideas and help make them workable. And that was part of the problem as well with these amendments, was a couple of the issues were unworkable. So I haven't got a lot more to add apart from at the end of the day we had that amendment which was defeated. We looked at the overall scheme and the Assembly voted 6-3 in favour of the recommendations with 1 abstention. Thank you, Chairman.
Sorry, did you want to pause, sir?
Please may I make the point that some things have been put onto the website last night. The questioners had to have their questions in by 10:30 yesterday. And I'm sorry that we're being criticised for not giving the board notice on such things. And I'm sorry I feel that probably not being fair. Thank you.
Well, I think there's we do need to get some notice, otherwise we won't be able to get answers to the questions. I accept that on some of there are updates to the website which are done at erratic times, some of which isn't under our control. So we have tried to share the information, and we'll certainly continue to share it, including the discussions with the local liaison forum. What we're about to discuss is a proposed scheme, but then there'll be a lot more changes and adaptations. So I think we try our best, is all I can say. We don't have a large resource in terms of this, but we certainly aim to give everybody who's wanted to ask a question an opportunity, and we will continue to try and give as much information as we can on the website. So in terms of the questions, is there any more to be added on the questions? Okay, right. So in front of us we've got on page 79 onto 80 an A to G set of recommendations, and we've also got two further recommendations which are the same or parallel to Piston Road, in that we've got recommendations in relation to both ensuring that there's a green landscaping and trees plan, and also that there will be a specific local liaison forum for Milton Road. Those are the recommendations in front of us, and we've had a number of issues, including raised by councillors, such as what are the opportunities to have, are they called tiger crossings, or but to have better, so in terms of some of the issues of detail which are not, which are within the scope of the plan for Milton Road, we've got the issue raised by Councillor Sargent about just seeing whether there is some work that can be done about pedestrian and cyclist permeability on Mitcham's Corner, accepting the recommendation that the main project will now be looked at as part of tranche 2. There's also in the autumn a City Council development plan consultation about Mitcham's Corner as well, so that may feed some discussion. We've definitely got the issue raised about the shape of the road around the end of Hurst Park Avenue, where it meets with Milton Road. We've got the issue of the proposal, which is still for a junction at Highworth Avenue, but discussions about some of the detail. And I'm sure there's some other details I'm not covering, including segregated bus lanes, segregated cycle lanes. So, do you want to add anything on this report, Mr. Ward? No. Are there any comments from board members about it? Councillor Birkin.
Can I just ask on Mitcham's Corner how the city deal will work on what we've just been talking about at the moment on Milton Road and Piston Road dovetails with the City Council's work on its development framework for Mitcham's Corner and the consultation that the Chairman's just mentioned?
Good question. I'm just looking to see if any City Council colleagues were present. I think one of the issues there is that what's been developed is very much an urban realm type scheme that City Council colleagues have developed. Work needs to be done how that works in terms of traffic jams, how it works in terms of cycle safety concerns, and cycle camping have some concerns about how that might work. Some of the team have been looking at a similar scheme in Oxford that's recently been implemented to take a view on that. So we feel there's quite a bit of work to be done yet. There's also a question mark over the cost of it. It could be quite an expensive scheme, be £4 to £5 million. Does it deliver city deal objectives in terms of improving the transport infrastructure, or does it deliver more wider objectives in terms of improving the environment? So I think we'd all agree the environment is it's a real 1970s museum piece of a traffic layout. It doesn't do much for the local environment. It needs something doing to it, but we just feel that we're not far enough advanced to develop that. It needs more work. We also feel it needs a positive decision by the board as well. They want to commit a significant sum to that, which we would recommend taking as part of the tranche 2 decision-making process. My understanding is that City Council are pursuing other funding streams through development works in the area, but I don't have the answers to that here just now.
Okay, any other questions? Can I then move to the recommendations? So we've had a fair bit of discussion by way of responding to the question. So we've got recommendations to note the findings in the initial consultation report, to take forward the do something option, including the Union Lane closure, which I know there's some concerns about, but it's a proposal because it has a significant benefit to as part of the overall project. Elizabeth Way area, there's still floating bus stops where should highway space permit, but excluding the ideas for band right turns at Gilbert Road, Arbury Road and King's Hedges Road, to agree to consider major changes to Richards Corner as part of Tranche 2, but along with the point that I made, if this isn't part of the recommendations, that there's a number of points that will be there for the local liaison forum. Note further technical work, support the development of traffic management measures, delegate authority, but I think there was a point at the assembly that the... Sorry?
Can I raise something on that point?
On which point?
That one.
Yeah. I was just going to say on F that the Assembly, while you get into the front, that the Assembly wanted to see the proposals informally. Was that part of their recommendation? So in addition to this process, I just think we want to make sure that other members of the board and the Assembly all see the proposals.
Yeah, yes, as soon as possible, that's all, Chair. Yes.
Yeah, okay. Councillor Sargent.
Yeah, if you read F literally, it means it will come back. It will go to further consultation without actually coming to the board, and the approval will be by the chair and vice chair of the board. That is surely not what you want, or certainly not what residents want. Surely it has to come back at least to the board, and we will vote to the Assembly for approval before it goes out to consultation.
Chair, if I may, we weren't asking for formal approval, we were asking to see it so that we could feed into it.
Can I ask your view on this, Mr. Mingus?
We're more than happy to share the detailed proposals when they're worked up informally with board members and assembly members before they go to consultation. Clearly, if we bring it back to the board, that will add several weeks, 6 weeks to 8 weeks into the process for moving the scheme forward and delivery. And essentially, I would suggest will be eventually turn into a consultation on what we're going to consult on. So we would think it would be better to work the scheme up with local liaison forum input, work the scheme up, then go out and ask the public what they think on that scheme, and then bring that back.
I mean, basically what it says is that myself and Councillor Burkett will take the flap if, and we also have the opportunity, when it says in consultation, it does mean that if we didn't like it, we would stop it.
I understand what you're saying, Chair, but the problem is that the two previous stages, so the options stage and this stage have come to the board, but the most important stage is not coming to the board. I think that's totally wrong.
Well, it's going out for a further consultation, Councillor Sargent. Councillor Burkett?
Well, that was going to be my point. It is the most important stage, and it's going out to members of the public for consultation.
Could I ask about a timescale for that, please, bearing in mind the money?
1st of November.
Okay.
So when do the public get to have a look?
1st of November.
And then the next stage is what after that, when decisions are made?
Decision well, the consultation will run to 6 weeks to Christmas. It will be assessed. The timescales are actually in the report. And they're also in the back. So the timescales are in Appendix 7. So if you look for the Appendix 7, you'll see the timescales. So I want to move these as a package of recommendations with the extra 2 recommendations that are the same as for Histon Road on landscaping and trees, and also on the role of the local liaison forum. Can I see those in favour? Thank you. Thank you for the extensive inputs. There will be the forums, and there will be a genuine role for your elected representatives. And the way that if you look at the City Deal Board website, you'll see the constitution for the local liaison forums, and through the locally elected councillors, the shape of any wider input into those forums can also be shaped. So have a look at the detail of how local liaison forums work. But thank you for all your questions.
Just one little question about that. For the people who aren't sort of regularly studying the City Deal website, and I'm sure there are loads of them who live around Milton Road, Bristol Road, how can they know? Are there going to be any kind of posters, notices in the press, anything to help ordinary people?
There will be a series of dates. Tanya?
We should be launching a service that you can sign up for regular newsletters. And
yeah, but I'm talking about people who don't sign up for newsletters and use computers. I'm talking about old ladies who've lived on Milton Road for 70 years.
Well, I would hope that well, first of all, the local councils are quite good at pushing bits of literature through your doors. So I would expect that the dates and some of the detail will be on a notice board, for instance, at Milton Road Library. So that's what normally happens in other areas with the forums. The county council proactively makes sure that within the community there is some information about the next meeting.
Okay, it's just I know technology works for a certain generation, but there's other people who don't.
That's understood, and if we can make a note of that, then we'll follow that up. Okay. Thank you. So thank you for all coming for that. We'll continue to move on to the other items of our agenda. Where on cross-city cycling we've got two questioners, Councillor John Williams, who's Councillor for Fulball, and also Vince Farrer. So if we take questions 5 and 6, please. Thank you, Councillor Williams.
Thank you. First of all, I welcome the two cross-city cycling schemes that involve the Fulball division of the Camp Council, and can confirm that they have widespread support, and indeed the chair of the Fendon Parish Council will confirm that. However, the Fulbourn Road and Cherry Hinton East Access Scheme is only a job half done, as it does not address the existing very poor sight of the pedestrian crossing at Yarrow Road and the well-used but substandard shared cycling path from Fulbourn Road to the Capital Park Business Park and the necklace village of Fulbourn. For the Fulbourn Road scheme to be fully utilised and to tackle traffic congestion in the city, it is important that this substandard shared path is also upgraded at the earliest opportunity, and I seek confirmation that this is in hand.
Thank you, Councillor, and I'll just take the next question, question 6. Thank you for your patience, Mr. Farrer. You did have the option to ask it at the beginning.
Did I? Well, I was warned not to arrive too early.
Okay.
I think it's a bit nice to see for a while.
All right.
I've actually got not a question, it's more of a statement of support for the officers. I don't know if you're aware of the area, but there's a cycle way has been built between Horlingsey and Fenditton, and it stops short at the Fenditton boundary line. It's going before my time, but from the records I can gather, it was originally intended to go as far as the primary school, but funding was actually withdrawn in September 2010, so it stopped short. Since that day, the Parish Council has been trying to find ways to complete this cycleway, to extend the cycleway from Horlingsey Road as far down Ditton Lane as possible, so it would join on to NC11, which is the cycle route. The Parish Council has also been trying to get the Ditton Lane widened, because it's very, as part of an LHI scheme, but again, the cost prevented this. And this is primarily for safety reasons. Because the road, the pavement is so narrow there, and it's the main route used by the children of the primary school and their parents going from East Barnwell up to the Fendon Primary School. This stretch is really busy, and it's barely wide enough for one buggy. And a large percentage of the cost will be used to widen this area. And the main risk is from lorries and van with mirrors actually hitting people's heads. The road pathway is so narrow there. And the local cyclists, because the road itself is so narrow, the local cyclists are actually illegally mainly used there for this narrow footpath. Because if they go down the road, especially the elderly, you end up with very frustrated car drivers behind them. So, in summary, the outstanding issue is oh yes, there was one other item. We actually have been working very closely with the City Deal cycling team, and working out the details included in the public, including planting solutions to arrive at the best possible outcome. One thing that was shorted in the plan put forward by the City Cycling team that we've seen. There's an outstanding issue, there's a gap in their proposed path between the existing cycle route from Hordingsea and going down towards the school. And now I understand that it's a funding limitation, so I would actually ask you to consider some additional funding to bridge this gap, so that there's continuity between the Hordingsea Road cycleway and going down to Johnston Lane.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Farrow, including for your patience. If Stuart or someone's going to pick up those two questions.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, I mean, Councillor Evans, we totally agree. What we will do is to consider where we can continue with the development of these schemes as part of the Tranche 2 programme. So we'll bring some ideas forward. We're doing that at the moment, some early testing, evaluation of what we can achieve to make these schemes really work to full benefit. And equally, if there are any other suggestions like have been made here now, if you could write in and let us know, we could then build those in as part of our continuing.
It's about maybe 200 metre gap. It's not huge.
Yeah. But there are many of these sorts of things, so we just need to be able to manage and prioritise and deal with the best way we can.
So now we will look at gaps in particular because they are sometimes complicated, but they're not high cost.
This is very simple.
Yeah.
There's nothing. It's just a straight piece of road.
Councillor Burkitt is championing you and your interests and others on this.
Can I ask Bob, is this part of the Greenways plan, or is it not yet in the Greenways?
Mike's just giving me the thumbs up through the back of the room. Sorry.
It is. We can say yes to that.
So I suggest you talk to Mike about it being in the Greenways plan. Okay. That's how to make it on our radar screen.
What's it called again?
Greenway. There's a map called the Greenways Plan, which is the ambition to extend investment in cycling out into South Cambridge. Thanks for your question.
It's not yet a fixed plan, so there's plenty of opportunity for people to add to that.
It's a proposed
suggestions forward.
Yeah. It's not programmed, it's just a proposal. Thank you.
Yeah.
Not programmed yet. It's like Monty Python sometimes. Any comments on this, on item 12, Roger?
Unanimous support for the Assembly, Chair.
Right, thank you. So we've got, particularly on pages 105 on to 106, we've just got the details of how these schemes are going to be implemented. So as following up Councillor Williams, we're going to implement that, but there's... Did we probably answer your question?
You said that there is a second stage.
Fine, okay. So we've answered your question. So basically, if people look at the table on pages at 105, 106, you'll see the plans. There's still on the Arbury Road one, and then the Cambridge North station, there are some further processes. Okay? Councillor Bates.
I'm looking at not page 108 on the finance. And I noticed that it's allocated at 4 million to start with, a further 4 million, which is double the cost, and the section 106, which actually concerns me a little bit that the schemes, I'm supporting the schemes, but double the cost. I read that and I thought, well, I used my red pen on it, put it like that. Why has it gone up? What's the issues there? I should have maybe asked the questions before. I noticed the officers have just gone.
Now you can ask the question in
so I can ask
everybody can understand why what was originally estimated at 4 million has grown.
I suppose it all improves is, I think, regular report.
And I'm sure there's a good reason, and we'll ask Bob Menzies to provide one.
Essentially, the £4 million was allocated back in January 2015 without any scheme development, even listed what the schemes would be. We then prioritised the schemes just simply as lines, sections of road that needed cycling improvements, and now we've worked the schemes up in detail, so it was a very, very broad brush estimate. The options available to you would be to actually curtail the schemes back to the £4 million. I would suggest the best way to do that would be to cut some out rather than shave back on them. And you make sure we do the most quality, or to we to actually allocate the additional £4 million. Given the uncertainties around the delivery of other schemes, we would recommend that it's worth allocating the additional funds.
Given that we've got a core of schemes that we think we can deliver, given that if you just take the issues that we've discussed about Histon and Milton Road, those numbers were finger in the air numbers to some extent, albeit based on a particular combination.
I'm happy to accept the recommendation.
Did you want to add anything?
Only to say that in addition as well, we're learning all the time, and we've built some really good schemes. We've looked at floating bus stops, and these do cost money, but they have great benefit, so it is worth us pursuing innovation.
I think we also have some funding which is discretionary in the sense that we've put in money which government isn't going to challenge us on completely. So if we are able, using some of the money that we put together to do schemes like this, then good.
So the recommendations are as on
page 105, A to D. Have I got vote in favour? Thank you, and thank you for your input, Roger. We've covered agenda item 13, so we skip that and we move to agenda item 14, where I think the Assembly had something to say. We've already had a question about it earlier. Sorry. We've got a public speaker that I didn't... 29. Sorry. Lucy Price. Wow. That's stamina. Thank you for waiting, Lucy. I'm sure that some of the other material was of great interest to you as well. Okay, so thank you, Lucy. I did look at that question earlier on, saying I hadn't got it anywhere on my list. So, your question.
Thank you. I'm Lucy Price. I'm a Milton Road resident and a local photographer. I attended the Assembly last week and heard the Assembly urging an improvement to the current design code. I'd like the board to consider the use of more creative infrastructure to encourage people to walk and cycle through these spaces. Examples of this are the D&A cycle path, building on Station Road with changing lighting by Let Me On, and the cycle counter on Parker's Piece. At the Assembly, there is a call to mark the heritage of the city. The infrastructure design on Milton Road should at least reflect the groundbreaking innovative work going on in the Science Park. We should have a wow factor entrance to Cambridge. Low-level lighting, safely positioned sculpture or cycle counters could really enhance the space as long as nearby residents are not disturbed, and more importantly, encourage people out of their cars and improve the experience for all. While safety and usability is clearly a far higher priority, I would like to ask if the board will consider recommending that these spaces become a fun, interactive space where possible, and where we are likely to lose trees, we incorporate light, sculpture and creativity to compensate. Thank you.
Thank you, Lucy. Yes, that's in the spirit of Cambridge. So we're going to, I think if we take that as part of the introduction to the report that we've got on this. So we've got recommendations, but the Assembly's got a different set of proposals. Right?
Yeah, the Assembly went into one on this one,
yeah,
which is pleasing. The Assembly, it didn't endorse the recommendations as a package. It was concerned with the lack of detail in the document, but it did state that it's a good starting point. It was commented there was insufficient references to heritage, as we just heard, vision and quality, and it was not aspirational enough. Basically, we have a design board or process for housing, so why shouldn't we have one for highways too? So the Assembly had a bit of discussion. It wasn't enormous, but we were in one frame of mind by the look of it, and there were some amendments put forward that were unanimously agreed. And the Assembly recommends, as far as the recommendations in front of you, that recommendation A be changed to, at the start, request the improvement of. So it reads, request the improvement of City Deal Urban Environmental Design Guidance document. recommendations B and C to remain the same, but the Assembly would like to add, with the Board's permission, recommendations D and E. Recommendation D is to request officers to investigate the process of all future city deal schemes being considered by the Cambridgeshire Quality Design Panel. So that's an investigation to see if we can actually do that. And E is it requests officers to investigate the introduction of a facility that invites members of the public to provide photographs of aspirational ideas and also ideas to be avoided for website-based montage. So we've got some interaction there as well. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. So I think we'll move to the introduction of the report. And any contributions from others? Did I see?
If I just quickly introduce it.
Thanks,
Chair.
Thanks.
Yeah, it's just that if we wind the clock back a little bit, the idea is that here we are producing a concept design document, which is a document that relates to current thinking, good practice, what's the current design guide existing out there that we can adopt. We use the expertise that we have available to us, and Glenn's here to talk quickly about it, and the consultants, WSP, Parsons Brinckerhoff, who are one of the main players in sort of urban design, public realm documentation, and producing some of the good guidance that exists out there at the moment. So the principles is that we intended to capture as much as we could in relation to what is existing good practice out there. And that's, in essence, what this document represents. I don't know if Glenn wants to add.
No, not very much at all. Chair, members of the board. Really just to say that when we were with you in January of this year, it was emphasised very strongly that these be guiding principles, and that it was high-level principles rather than a detailed document. As far as the recommendations from the Assembly, the quality panel, but also reference to other documents, very happy to consider those, and I'm happy to answer your questions.
Okay. Any comments? Councillor Bowden?
I think I'm a bit torn, really, because I hear what the Assembly says, and on the one hand, I want to respect that if they want this looked at. On the other hand, a guide is just a guide, and I think it's good that it remains a guide, and also a guide in a certain extent. This is sort of a top-down process. We improve it as a guide, and the danger is you start imposing it on people. We heard throughout the whole of today lots of residents wanting the local liaison forums to get going. And I think that's a much more interesting way of finding out what people on the ground near to our schemes actually want to do locally. And in fact, I prefer, in a way, to be guided by them than to be guided, which I think is a bottom-up process, than to be guided from a top-down process. So I'd be happy to leave it alone, but if others want to respect the Assembly and take the amendments, I'll go along with that.
Mr. Reid.
Thank you. I suggest that we've got the Assembly, we've got the function, this is a unanimous Assembly proposition because it's not exclusive. Both can be done.
Thank you. That was very brief. I think there's quite a lot that isn't in this document. I mean, if you look at issues like use of trees in roadscape, if you look at green spaces, I just think we've got a number of good elements in it, but I just think we should almost just consult the Assembly and the Board and say, well, what isn't in there that we think needs to be added? So, Councillor Bates.
In response to Councillor Liquid, I think I'm quite happy going on with the change to number A. Okay. In respect of the other suggestions about the Cambridge Quality Panel, I should perhaps remind myself as well that I was part of the Horizons Board that set this up. Okay, it does cost money, but it tends to look at major schemes. It normally doesn't drill down greatly into perhaps the sort of schemes that are coming at Milton Road and Christopher. That's not to say we can't use them at some point in the future, but they tend to look at large schemes in respect of development, not only about the landscape, but also about the design features within the buildings etc., etc. And of course they are a group of professional planners, architects, etc. And they do bring a lot when you're looking at 500 homes. And that tends to be where they tend to look at. They do look at schools as well, about how that would fit in with that. So I'm a little bit, I suspect, similar to Francis, so I can go one way or the other. I don't think I want to make a great big issue of it.
Well, I'd like to support the Assembly's recommendations. I think there is room for some interesting ideas, and I would think that as part of discussions like Milton Road that there will be occasional proposals. If we may have, depending on how things develop, an area of, I don't know, 1 metre by 10 metres or 100 metres, and we might think, well, how are we really going to make the best use of that? If I go back to the road I live on with Hills Road, we now have an effort to try and create a sedum area, and we've got responses to residents trying to remould the end of the floating bus stops into landscaped areas. So I just think if you experiment, sometimes we've got, it's not simple, and I'm not trying to make the life of the project manager that much more complicated, but we do end up with a range of interesting spaces where you want to try and create some sense of place or some value, and they're all different. Yeah. Councillor Sargent.
Sorry.
You better sit in the front row.
All right. Just quick.
I mean, I think one of the big issues around the Elizabeth Way Highworth Avenue roundabout is people like it at the moment, yeah, and we do need really good design in whatever comes forward to get the support of the residents, yeah. We've got to sell a lot of these things, and good design will be a big aspect of that, and I very much welcome the idea of putting better design into some of these things. And, you know, as the person before said, you know, we need some landmarking as well. Okay.
Yeah, I mean, we haven't got an unlimited budget, but we can make an impact with some of the spaces, including because sometimes doing X doesn't cost any more than doing Y. So, are we happy with the revised Assembly recommendations? That we see a lot of good in this document. It gives us quite a lot of base for a lot of what we're doing, but that we continue the work. Is that?
What do we mean by improvement, and within what resource?
Well, I made a suggestion that each member of the board and the Assembly be asked, well, what elements do they think are missing, and that will then shape that. So we undertake some further work, and if there are inputs from other people who are here, that's taken into account as well. But it's not this. As has been said to me, this project could outlast the city deal, because we can continue to evolve design and get new ideas, and to some extent it should be an evolution, but I think what we should really be aiming for is an update by, I say, the autumn, rather than keeping this going for a long time. And if we are then commissioning some people to do some work, we just want to have a one-off brief to effectively make a good job of trying to improve it. But it's not an ongoing project beyond improving it this time. Okay? So on the basis of that route of getting input from the Assembly and Board and aiming for one improvement, can I see those in favour of the recommendations as they came from the Assembly? Thank you. Right, the next two items are effectively forward planning. So our next meeting is on the 13th of July. I should have asked you about Richmond's Corner, but maybe I'll ask you offline. So Glenn Richardson will be leading or coordinating the input on the City Council's work on Richmond's Corner this autumn. Yeah? Thank you. So we've got a number of items on the agenda. We've got a number of items. So firstly, on the progress report, if anybody wants to ask any questions on item 15. Councillor Birkin.
I just ask on page 127, April to 8 M11 segregated bus routes to the middle road. It says in the right hand box, 1st of September, Executive Board selects preferred option. I think it's on said to be subject to further public consultation. Roughly when will that public consultation start? You can answer it offline.
Can we answer it offline? I think early in the new year, I think we'll
Can you answer it offline?
There is a programme.
Put it in minutes. You just put it in minutes offline, that's great.
Any other questions? So we've got a range of previous initiatives coming back, and essentially it indicates the timings of the reports. And we've got a number of items coming to the next meeting. So if people are happy with Agenda 15, I'll move on to. There's a very useful diagram in terms of timescales, and the only point that I will add to that is that given our 5-year programme, there isn't any space for slippage in some of those programmes. If there is, then we have to find the catch up somewhere else. So item 16, if you're happy, so we've got a list here of the items that are coming to the meeting on the 13th of July. So we've got an update on smart infrastructure. We've got intelligent mobility. So there's both of those smart technology reports. We've got a very important report on skills and also on apprenticeships, because it's going to cover the target that the City Deal has for creating apprenticeships. We work very closely and well with the Met on that, and we obviously want to continue that. But in part, there's a discussion, I think, to be had about what resources the City Deal is likely to be putting in, and how that would match in existing programmes and work. But we've definitely got a specific apprenticeship target set by government that we need to meet. We've got an annual housing review, including on affordable housing, and we've got finance. So, and we certainly got to have a further report coming probably more in the autumn. I think we still need to have a serious discussion about our budgets, both identifying what we're committing to, and presumably we could update a bit, Bob, some of the estimates of the 2020 programmes, the big programmes.
Yes, Stuart has been working with the finance team. Stuart has been working with the finance team to actually profile, based as much as, given we haven't got certainty what the schemes are yet, as much as we can profile that. And we'll bring that to you.
I appreciate that some numbers aren't certain, but we're coming up to halfway soon, in the middle of 2017, so we'll be there pretty soon in terms of, we'll then need to commit, be fairly clear about where the money's committed.
Well, yes, we'll give you as much clarity as we can, but it's ultimately still the decisions you'll be taking about shipping schemes.
Fair enough, touché. So that's basically our immediate focus. Is the 13th, and then we've got a meeting following the Joint Assembly with the 4 to 8 on the 1st of September, and nothing else in particular on that at the moment. Chisholm Trail October, more on skills and housing. Probably I would think that what I'd suggest, can I ask that on finance that we actually timetable for October a fuller report on finance as well as the quarterly report? Certainly the board itself has to make some choices about the extra funds it's got. And then we've got the Western Orbital and Tranche 2 prioritisation coming at that meeting, the November meeting. The finance would come to November along with these rescheduled reports on the Western Orbital and Tranche 2, and that's it. Okay. Question? Or point?
Can I just ask on page 135? I think next month's going to be a really interesting meeting, because we're going to move away from transport and we're going to talk about skills, housing and smart city, which I think is really good that we put the spotlight back on those three. Can I just ask, in terms of the officers who coming, can I confirm Noelle will be able to come herself to talk about smart city? Because I think that would be really good, because I know she's been able to come on a couple of previous occasions.
I understand it's in her diary, and also it would be really good to get LEP officers who lead on skills along as well.
So that was good. The second of my 4 questions on skills, as well as Graham. I think it would be good to have LEP representatives. I've spoken to Mark, not you, there was Mark Cooper, and the LEP then use Form for the Future, don't they?
And we do.
And I wonder whether somebody from Form for the Future could come as well.
I'm quite happy to. I'm sure Tony can organise that support to be here.
We've got 2 more questions,
And then on the housing review, I love Alex Collier a lot, but I think Alan Carter should come as well.
I think you've already told him that in his diary.
Requested that, which is great. And then separately, at some stage, Chairman, between now and the end of the year, do you think we could put on the agenda item for the greenways? I would like to have an update.
You've got tranche
on
2,
greenways.
it can be part of tranche 2, or at the same time.
It's already been thought of, though, by officers. So not to ask for any extra work, but just to put a spotlight on something that I think lots of people are keen on.
Yeah.
If officers could just bring something on greenways at some stage.
We have a light agenda it would fit in with the 13th of October because we've got, or whatever date that is now, because we've got the Chisholm Trail on there. We have a light agenda.
It would fit perfectly with Chisholm Trail because we have a cycling page.
Okay. Councillor Bates.
Can I suggest on skills perhaps we widen that a little bit of the agenda because I think there could be some other people who can help to train. I'm thinking of where they do adult training in respect to Lindsay, Hayden Smith at the County Council, but also actually people that sit on the Assembly who actually are in regional colleges, etc. So perhaps could we just, what I call, broaden it out a little bit more about skills, because I think there's quite a few people and organisations that play into that. Just a suggestion.
Can I follow up that? And the Assembly did some really good work on skills as a subgroup. So if we could, I don't know, if officers could, you make a note, Tanya, to contact those Assembly members that contributed on skills before, because I think recreating a subgroup linked to the further objectives that we've got will get us some voluntary assistance. Because as Ian's inferred, we've got a wider business and education representation than we've got here, simply because there's more bodies on the Assembly, and they did some really good work before. Okay. Anything else on item 16? Well, I reached the end. And I would like to thank everybody, and I'd particularly like to thank both the team of Joanna, Beth and Tanya, but also Bob, Stuart and people like Richard Preston, who've done a shed load of work, and not forgetting Greg, who manages a number of aspects really well for us. So thank you to our officers. Thank you. And thank you to the board as well. Thank you to those who lasted all the time, the residents, and all of your inputs. I genuinely meant it that I was not happy with the way that the report came out. It wasn't that we hadn't looked and considered, it was a very technically written report. I agree. But we're always open to meeting up with residents associations, so if you want to invite us, we're happy to come and talk.